In a 1940s Minneapolis film exchange, the metal rewind handle is cool in your hand and the film splicer's bench is yours for the night. There is no hurry here, only the steady sound of work finding its pace. We'll stay close to the bench, close to the light, while the city outside settles under street lamps and river air. The room has the dry smell of paper cartons, old varnish, machine oil, and warm dust rising from the lamp over your hands. Film cans wait in low stacks beside you, each one labeled in pencil, crayon, or typed slips from a theater office somewhere across Minnesota. Some have come in from neighborhood houses in Minneapolis, some from towns beyond the city, and all of them carry the faint marks of other rooms. You can almost feel the Saturday matinee in them, the winter coats, the popcorn salt, the hush before the projector catches. Your bench is narrow but familiar, worn smooth where elbows have rested through long evenings. On it sit the tools of a 1940s Minneapolis Film Splicer, simple and exact: a pair of rewinds, a small viewer, a cement bottle, a scraper, scissors, tape for labels, and a splicing block with tiny guide pins that wait for the perforations. The work is quiet, but it asks for care. Your fingers learn to move slowly because a careless pull can stretch a torn edge and a rushed cut can steal a frame that someone meant to see. You lift the first reel from its can and set the metal hub onto the left rewind. The reel has a faint chill from the storeroom and its edge feels smooth, almost silky, where the layers of film lie against each other. With your right hand, you fit an empty take-up reel onto the other spindle, then thread the leader across the bench. The film makes a soft clicking sound as the perforations pass your thumb, like tiny teeth counting the evening. In Minneapolis in the 1940s, motion pictures arrive as separate reels, not as one long ribbon. A feature might come in several cans, heavy enough to make your wrist remember each lift. Before those reels go out again, someone must inspect them, repair brakes, replace leaders, and make sure the order is right. Tonight, that someone is you, sitting in the warm circle of the bench lamp while the rest of the exchange grows quieter behind you. The first few feet are only leader, pale and scratched, marked with grease pencil and old cue writing from projection booths. You wind gently, watching for torn sprocket holes and places where the image jumps. The viewer throws a small, flickering rectangle of light upward, and faces pass through it without drama, silent and gray. They are not the story tonight. The story is the join between one strip and another, the small invisible repair that lets everything continue. When you find the first damaged splice, your hands pause before your mind says anything. There's a thicker patch in the film, a slight bump, and then a cloudy place where old cement has dried unevenly. You stop the rewind, ease the film back a few inches, and let it lie flat in the block. The bench lamp hums faintly above you, and outside, a truck passes over wet pavement with a low rolling sound. The repair begins with cutting away what can't be trusted. You use the scissors cleanly, choosing a frame line so the loss is as small as possible. Then you scrape the emulsion from one end, a thin gray dust gathering under the blade. The smell changes as the cement bottle opens, sharp and sweet for a moment, then quickly familiar, part of the room's ordinary weather. You fit the two ends together in the splicing block, perforations settled over the pins. The film must lie flat, without curl or pride at the seam. A small brush of cement goes on, not too much, because too much makes a cloudy join, and too little lets the splice fail in a projector gate. You press the clamp down and wait, giving the repair its brief rest, while the city keeps breathing beyond the windows. There is patience in this small waiting. You don't force it. A film splicer in a Minneapolis exchange learns that good work often happens in pauses, in the few seconds when nothing seems to be happening at all. Your shoulders settle, your hands stay near the bench, the splice dries under the clamp, and the film becomes whole enough to travel again. After a while, the movements gather their own soft rhythm, and we go with them into the slower middle of the shift. The reel turns, your fingers feel the edges, and the light shows you what needs attention. Some damage is obvious, with a tear running in from the perforations, while some is only a faint buckle, where heat once touched the strip too closely in a projection room. You learn to read these marks the way a clerk reads handwriting. A theater's habits can live inside a reel. One house sends back leaders neatly wound and labels tied with care. Another uses thick grease pencil and leaves torn cue strips hanging like little flags. You don't judge them, you simply notice, because noticing is part of the work, and by now your hands know how to turn noticing into repair. The Minneapolis weather follows the cans indoors. In winter, the reels can arrive cold enough to mist slightly when opened near the lamp. In summer, they bring a stored warmth from trucks and loading docks, with cardboard softened by humidity. Tonight, the air feels somewhere between, cool at the floor and warm at your face, with the bench lamp making a small private season over your hands. You check the leader markings, making sure reel 1 is reel 1, reel 2 is reel 2, and nothing has been returned in the wrong can. The numbers are written out on paper labels, stamped on metal lids, sometimes scratched on old tags tied with string. Each label matters because a projectionist far away will depend on it in a booth above a dark auditorium. Your quiet order becomes someone else's smooth evening. The film passes through your fingers in a narrow ribbon of shadow and shine. On one side, the images are tiny, too small to hold as scenes unless you stop and squint. On the other, the optical soundtrack runs along the edge, a wavering band like pale grass or smoke. You avoid touching it more than you need to, because fingerprints and scratches can become crackle, hiss, or a missing word in the theater. Now and then, you hold the film near the viewer and watch a few feet pass. A woman turns her head in miniature. A door opens. A street, maybe not so different from one outside, slides through the little window. But you don't drift into the picture for long, because your work lives at the border of the picture, in the perforations, the frame lines, and the joins that should pass unnoticed. This is one of the gentle truths of the film splicer's bench. The best repair is the one nobody sees. In the auditorium, no one thinks of your scraper, your cement brush, or the faint ache in your wrist from turning the rewinds. They only feel the movie continue. That can be enough. There is a quiet kindness in making something pass smoothly through another person's evening. By the time the first reel is finished, the room has settled into its later sound, and the next can wait with its metal lid slightly askew. You wind the inspected reel onto its core, not too tight, not loose enough to slump. A tight wind can make trouble later, especially when film has been through many hands. A loose wind can shift in the can and crease at the edges, so you let your touch stay moderate, as if the reel were something sleeping. The paperwork beside you is plain. There are return slips, repair notes, shipping lists, and pencil marks that show which theater gets which print next. You write slowly enough that the next worker can read it. Reel 2 repaired near head. Leader replaced. Bad splice removed. The words are small, practical, and almost invisible compared with the posters in theater lobbies, yet they hold the root of the film together. In the 1940s Minneapolis exchange, your job belongs to a whole quiet chain of labor. Drivers carry the cans. Clerks schedule the bookings. Projectionists thread the machines. Ushers sweep aisles after the last show. You sit among them without seeing most of them, connected by labels, reels, and the ordinary trust that each person will do their part before passing the work along. The next reel is heavier, and the can opens with a soft scrape of metal on metal. Inside, the film smells older, with a deeper note of solvent and dust. You lift it carefully, supporting the edge so it doesn't sag, and set it on the rewind. Your hands have learned respect for weight, not fear, not fuss, just a calm attention to how things behave when they are tired from use. This reel has seen many showings. The leader is short, and the first frames are scratched from hurried threading. You replace the leader with a fresh length, measuring enough for a projectionist to lace the machine without crowding the first image. The new leader is blank and pale, smooth under your fingers, a small, clean beginning for a reel that has already traveled through many booths. The cut must be square. You line it in the splicer, trim the edge, scrape, brush, press, and wait. The motions repeat, yet they do not become empty. Each splice has its own small personality. One lies flat at once, another wants to curl. The third shows an old repair beneath the new one, a layered history of breaks and fixes, almost like a scar that has learned to hold. As the evening deepens, we move with the work from repair into inspection, where the eye grows patient and the hands grow light. You turn the handle steadily, neither too fast nor too slow, and the film travels from one reel to the other with a whispering pull. The sound is close and delicate, a dry ribbon sound, and beneath it, the building gives small creaks as pipes cool in the walls. There may be other benches in the room, and other workers with their own pools of light. Someone coughs softly, someone closes a drawer, a pencil rolls and is caught before it falls. The film exchange is not silent, but its noises are modest, each one softened by paper, wood, cardboard, and the late hour. You can work in such a room for a long time without needing to speak. Your fingertips become good instruments. They feel a nick before your eyes find it. They sense when the film edge is no longer true. Sometimes a damaged perforation catches lightly against your skin, and you stop, turn back, and inspect the place under the lamp. The work rewards slowness, because the floor is small, and small things are easily missed when the mind rushes ahead. A torn perforation can matter more than it seems. In the projector, those little holes guide the film past the light, frame by frame, with a steadiness the audience never thinks about. If the holes are ragged, the image may jump, chatter, or tear again. So you mend what can be mended and remove what can't, keeping the loss slight and the path smooth. The city outside has its own machines turning. Streetcars grind along tracks. Elevators shift in warehouse shafts. Somewhere near the river, a late freight car may be coupling with a dull iron sound. But at your bench, the machine is simple. 2 reels, 1 lamp, 1 pair of hands, and the long patient ribbon crossing the small bright space between them. There is comfort in this scale. The motion picture industry may feel large in advertisements, stars, studios, and grand theater fronts, but here it returns to touch. Here the picture is only film, and film is only a thing that can tear, curl, dry, scratch, and be repaired. You meet it where it is. You don't need applause for that. You only need the next clean join. Sometimes the images themselves tell you where the reel has suffered. A burst of scratches appears during a chase, where projection booth tension may have gone wrong. A splice comes near a scene change, where a previous cut was made to remove a break. You glimpse a ballroom, a kitchen, a train platform, and then the frame line takes your attention again. The film's story passes by, but your story stays at the bench. When a reel is finished, you hold its outer edge with your palm and let the last turn settle. You secure the end with a paper band or a tucked leader. Then mark the can so it can move onward. The lid goes on with a low metallic sound. It's not a dramatic sound. It's the sound of one task closing properly, and there's something restful in that. Later in the shift, the small human details begin to matter more, because the work has grown familiar enough to make room for them. Your tea or coffee has cooled beside the paperwork, tasting faintly of metal from the thermos. A sandwich wrapped in waxed paper waits in a drawer or on a shelf, the bread pressed flat where it leaned against a ledger. You eat when the cement is drying, or when the next reel hasn't yet been lifted. Your hands carry the smell of the bench. Soap will take some of it away, but not all. There is always a trace of film cement, paper dust, and the dry smoothness of acetate or nitrate stock in the skin around your nails. In a 1940s Minneapolis winter, when you step outside after work, the cold air makes those smells sharpen for a moment before they vanish into snow and street smoke. The clothes are practical, sleeves rolled back, apron or work coat if the shop uses them, shoes that can stand on wooden floors without complaint. Nothing about the roll needs display. The film splicer's pride is hidden inside the neatness of the reels, inside the absence of trouble, inside the way a projectionist never has to stop the show because your repair gave way. You may know some projectionists by name, though you rarely see them. Their notes come back in cans, sometimes curt, sometimes polite. Bad jump near tail of reel 3. Sound scratch after first changeover cue. Need more leader. You read these notes without irritation. because they are part of the conversation between rooms. They tell you what the auditorium noticed and what the booth had to manage in the dark. A changeover cue is a small mark near the end of a reel, placed so the projectionist knows when to start the next machine. You check those places carefully. A cue too faint may be missed. A damaged section near the cue can make the change rough. In the theater, the audience only feels a continuous picture, but behind that continuity is timing, attention, and 1,000 small habits learned by hand. The splicer's bench teaches a particular kind of humility. You don't own the film, and you don't perform it. You tend it. You keep it fit for travel, the way a railway worker tends track or a pressman tends rollers. The beauty is not in being noticed. The beauty is in the passage, in helping something fragile move from one place to another without calling attention to the care it required. As night gathers more fully beyond the windows, we come to the part of the work where the room feels almost outside of time. The stacks of cans have lowered. The paperwork is neater than it was. Your lamp still makes its warm circle, and the rewinds still turn with that same patient sound. The city may be moving toward sleep, but the films are being made ready for tomorrow's audiences. You open another can from a smaller house outside Minneapolis, perhaps a town where the theater sits on a main street with a hardware store, a cafe, and a post office nearby. The label is worn at the corners. The reel inside has a strip of cloth tape holding the leader down. You remove it gently, because even the old tape tells you someone tried to be careful. This print has dust in the windings. You see it as a faint grey line along the edge, and you smell it when the reel turns. Dust is ordinary. It comes from booths, carpets, roads, wool coats, and the breath of crowded rooms. You clean what you can with a soft cloth, moving lightly so you don't grind dirt into the surface. The cloth comes away marked, and the film looks a little clearer under the light. There is a pleasure in returning order to something that has been handled hard. Not perfect order, because old prints carry their years, but enough order for use, enough smoothness, enough trust. You are not making a new thing at the bench. You are allowing an existing thing to keep serving, and that kind of work has a gentle dignity of its own. The viewer glows again, and small frames pass like windows on a slow train. A face appears, then a table, then a street corner, then a title card or studio mark from the head of the reel. You let the pictures pass without chasing them. The sound of the rewind is steadier than the images. The weight of the handle in your hand is steadier still. Now your shoulders know the posture of the shift. One hand turns, one hand guides. Your eyes move between edge, image, and label. The bench has become a small geography, and every tool has its place within reach. Scissors to the right, scraper near the block, cement bottle capped when not in use, pencil beside the repair slip. These are the landmarks of your evening. In a busy week, films may move quickly through the Minneapolis Exchange, arriving after one booking and leaving for the next before anyone has much time to admire them. That speed outside the bench makes your slowness more valuable. You give each reel the time it needs in the moment it's in front of you. The rest can wait its turn. Work becomes gentler when it's allowed to be one reel at a time. The later repairs are quieter than the first, not because they matter less, but because your body has settled into skill. You trim a ragged edge. You scrape emulsion until the base clears. You brush cement in a thin line, close the clamp, and count a few breaths. Somewhere in the building, a radiator taps. Somewhere outside, tires hiss through a damp street. By now, the room smells like the whole day gathered together. Cardboard, film stock, ink, coffee, wool, oil, and the faint sharpness from opened cement bottles all rest in the air. It isn't perfume, but it belongs to the place. Years later, a smell like that might return suddenly in a closet, a basement, or an old theater lobby, and for a moment, your hands would remember the bench before your mind did. You check one more tail leader, smoothing it through your fingers. The final feet of a reel often show the most wear, because projectionists handle them during changeovers and rewinds. You look for tears, loose joins, and writing that no longer makes sense. If the leader is too short or too weak, you replace it. A fresh tail leader is a small courtesy sent forward to someone working above another darkened room. The labor stays ordinary, and that is part of its calm. No one bursts in. No great decision arrives. The reels simply need tending, and you tend them. The world outside may carry news, weather, traffic, and noise, but on the bench the question remains simple. Is this splice sound? Is this edge clean? Is this reel ready to travel? As the last part of the shift approaches, we let the work grow even slower, following the final reels into their cans and the final notes onto paper. Your fingers are a little dry now from handling film and paper, and your eyes feel the warmth of the lamp. You blink, rest your focus on the far wall, then return to the small bright strip before you. The reel waits without impatience. The last can on the stack may be a short subject, a newsreel, a cartoon, or a trailer sent along with the feature. These smaller reels deserve the same care. A short reel can break as easily as a long one, and a child in the front row cares very much whether a cartoon runs smoothly. So you give it the same steady inspection, the same clean handling, the same neat label when it's done. Newsreels carry the outside world in brief flashes, but at the splicer's bench they are still only film. Crowds, ships, ball games, officials, winter storms, and factory lines pass through the viewer in silence. You don't need to carry their energy into the room. Your work remains the quiet work of edges and joins, of guiding the strip gently from one side of the bench to the other. A small repair near the end asks for your full attention. The tear runs close to the soundtrack, so you cut carefully, saving as much as you can. The scissors make one soft snip. The scraper whispers over the film base. The cement shines wetly for a second, then dulls as it settles. You press the join flat and wait with your hand resting lightly on the bench. Waiting has become part of the music. The clock, the radiator, the occasional car, the quiet turn of another reel somewhere nearby. All of it folds around the few seconds needed for a splice to hold. You may not think of it as peaceful while you're doing it. It's simply the work. But from here, in the calm of telling it, we can feel how much rest lives inside such steady attention. When the splice is ready, you test it gently between your fingers, not pulling hard, just feeling whether it lifts, bends, or catches. It holds. You wind the last feet onto the reel, smooth the leader, and secure it. The can receives it with a dull, soft ring, metal accepting metal, and the lid settles into place. The bench is not empty yet. There are slips to complete, tools to wipe, scraps to gather, and small curls of trimmed film to clear away. You collect the cut pieces and keep the surface clean, because tomorrow's work should not begin in yesterday's disorder. The cement cap is tightened, the brush is set right, the scraper is placed where your morning hand, or another worker's hand, will expect it. In the quiet after the last reel, the film exchange seems larger than before. The shelves stand in rows. The cans wait in stacks, each one holding a picture that will open somewhere else, under another beam of light. You have been part of that journey without leaving the room. Your night has traveled through Minneapolis, through small towns, through booths and balconies, through all those unseen paths made by ordinary labor. The lamp over the bench still glows, but its circle feels softer now. Your hands rest for a moment on the wood, and you notice the marks there. Fine scratches, old cement spots, a darkened place where many wrists have leaned. The bench has kept its own record of work, not in words, but in wear. You add one more evening to it, quietly, and that is enough for now. But the shift hasn't quite finished, because one shelf near the dispatch table still holds the reels that need a second look. You rise from the bench and feel the floorboards answer under your shoes, a soft old sound beneath the quiet room. The air away from the lamp is cooler, and the metal cans feel colder here, where they've waited against the wall. We take them down one by one, not quickly, because the labels need reading and the work still deserves its full attention. These are the troublesome reels, though no one in the exchange says it with much feeling. They are simply reels with notes attached, small complaints from projection booths, or returns that came in late and hurried. One says torn near changeover, another says bad chatter halfway through, another has no note at all, only a strip of red pencil across the label. which tells you someone meant to inspect it before sending it out again. Your job is to translate these marks into careful handling. You carry the first can back to the bench and set it down beside the rewinds. The lid sticks for a moment, then lifts with a dry metallic sigh. Inside, the reel sits slightly uneven, and the leader has slipped loose from its paper band. You notice that before anything else, a reel that has shifted inside its can may have rubbed its edges, and so your fingers go first to the outer wind, feeling for bent places, roughness, or a ridge where the layers no longer sit true. The film begins to cross the bench again, and the familiar whisper returns. At this hour, the sound is almost like breathing, in and out through the small machinery of your hands. We stay with that sound because it tells you when the reel is moving well and when it isn't. A clean reel runs with a smooth hush. A damaged reel speaks in catches, clicks, and small hesitations, and by now you've learned to listen without strain. The note from the projectionist said chatter halfway through, so you don't hurry through the beginning. Halfway will arrive when it arrives. The first several yards show ordinary wear. A few light scratches, a repaired splice that holds neatly, and leader marks from earlier bookings. Your thumb rests gently along the edge, never pressing hard. The film has its own stiffness from age, and your touch must be light enough to guide it without fighting it. Outside the windows, Minneapolis has settled into its late working sounds. There might be a streetcar bell from a few blocks off, or the low murmur of traffic beyond the warehouse fronts. In winter, the glass would hold a dark reflection of your lamp, and in summer, it might carry the faint smell of river damp and warm brick. Tonight, whatever the weather beyond the exchange, the bench keeps its steady climate of light, dust, and patient attention. When the damaged section appears, it announces itself quietly. The film edge wavers, and a line of perforations shows strain, stretched just enough to make the movement uneven. You stop the rewind and bring the strip back under the lamp. The tiny holes are no longer crisp. They have been pulled by a sprocket somewhere, not torn cleanly, but worried out of shape by repeated strain. It's the kind of damage that might make the image tremble without breaking the film completely. You consider how much to remove. Too little, and the reel may chatter again. Too much, and a larger bite disappears from the scene. This is one of the small judgments of a 1940s Minneapolis Film Splicer, and it comes without ceremony. You hold the frames to the light, find the line where sound and picture will suffer least, and make the cut. The scissors close softly, and a damaged strip curls away on the bench. The join that follows is ordinary and exact. Scrape the emulsion, clear the dust, brush the cement in a narrow shine. Set the ends together, with perforations sitting neatly on their pins, and let the clamp settle. While the splice dries, you look down at the loose piece you removed. It's only a few frames, hardly a breath in the theater, but it's enough to make the reel pass more calmly through the machine. There's a certain mercy in removing only what must be removed. You don't make the film new, because that isn't possible at this bench. You make it serviceable, readable, able to travel. The work accepts age without scolding it. It says, this part is tired, this part can stay, this part needs help, and this part may go. We could do worse than learn such patience from a strip of film under a warm lamp. When the splice is dry, you test it with the same restrained pull. It holds, and the edge feels even enough under your thumb. You wind forward again, listening for chatter that no longer comes. The reel moves on. It carries its scene, its repaired silence, its faint scar, and you guide it to the take-up side with the quiet satisfaction of a problem made smaller, not solved in a grand way, just made smaller, which is often how real work gets done. By now, the exchange has thinned around you, and the late shift feels almost private. A clerk may still be near the front, checking shipping cards under another lamp. Somewhere, a telephone might ring once and stop. The shelves remain full, but their presence is steady rather than demanding. You know you cannot tend every reel tonight. You tend the one in your hands, and that is how the night moves. The next marked can carries a different kind of trouble. The note says sound scratch near head, and that brings your attention to the narrow soundtrack edge as soon as the leader passes. You lean closer, not too close to the heat of the lamp, and let the first images slide through the viewer. The soundtrack line looks pale and wavering, like a little row of clouds pressed into the film. A scratch there can become a rasp in the theater, a harsh place in an otherwise smooth voice. You find it within the first few feet after the picture begins. A bright scratch runs along the sound area, not deep enough to ruin everything, but clear enough to be heard. You cannot erase it. That is one of the plain facts of the bench. Some damage can be repaired, and some can only be noted, cleaned, and sent forward with a warning. Your pencil waits beside the slip, and your hand rests there for a moment before writing. Still, you inspect the section carefully. There may be a splice nearby, or a torn edge that caused the sound to scrape in a projector. There may be grit caught in an old join. You clean the film with a soft cloth, slow and even, and watch the surface catch the light. The scratch remains, but the dust around it lifts away. Sometimes the work is not to fix the whole trouble, but to keep it from becoming worse. You make your note in clear words, because another worker, or a projectionist at the next house, should know what you found. Sound scratch near head, cleaned, no tear. The pencil makes a dry sound against the paper. Your handwriting has grown more deliberate as the night has gone on, and each word sits plainly in its line. There is comfort in such plainness. It leaves no room for fuss, only a record of what is true. The reel continues through inspection, and you let your attention widen again. The picture looks used but steady. The perforations hold. One old splice near the tail has yellowed, so you stop and replace it before it has a chance to fail. This is the preventive part of the film splicer's work. The mending done before anyone complains, before the audience hears a snap or sees the white burst of broken film in the gate. Quiet work often lives ahead of trouble. As the old splice comes apart under your scraper, you smell the faint mustiness of earlier cement. It lifts in a little film of residue, brittle and cloudy. You clear it away and make the new join clean, taking care that the image side and sound side sit level. Your fingers know the clamp now. They lower it without extra pressure, and while the cement sets, the bench seems to hold its breath with you. In the 1940s, film is both ordinary and precious. It travels in trucks, sits on shelves, gets dragged through machines, and comes back smelling of dust and heat. Yet inside those battered cans are faces, songs, news, cartoons, and stories people have saved coins to see. You understand this from the bench, not sentimentally, but practically. If the strip fails, the evening breaks. If it passes well, the room beyond the screen can stay inside its dream. The repaired reel winds cleanly to the end, and you secure the leader before setting it aside. The stack of completed cans grows slowly, each one less demanding than it was when it arrived. Your hand brushes across the tops of them as you make room for the next. Metal lids, paper labels, pencil marks, bits of colored tape, all of them form a small landscape at the edge of your light. It's not beautiful in a showy way, but it's beautiful enough. And as the late hours settle deeper, the work turns toward the reels that have been returned from their longest journeys. These cans come from farther out, from theaters that may show a print after larger houses have finished with it. The labels have more crossings out, more route marks, more signs of having passed through many storerooms and booth shelves. You lift one and feel its history in the weight, though of course the weight is only metal and film and the day's tiredness in your wrist. The lid opens, and the first scent is dry cardboard from the shipping insert. Beneath it comes the film smell, warmer and more chemical, with the faint dusty sweetness of old stock. You set the reel onto the rewind and notice that the edges are not perfectly even. A print used many times may have slight warps, repairs, shortened leaders, and splices made by many hands. Your task is to bring all those hands into one usable order for the next projectionist. The first leader is patched with tape, which is not what you want for a proper cement splice in the picture area, but leaders often carry little compromises. You inspect it anyway. Tape can dry, lift or leave stickiness that catches dust. If it looks untrustworthy, you replace the whole section with a cleaner leader, trimming and joining it with care. The new leader makes the reel feel calmer at once, like a coat buttoned properly against cold. You thread it across the viewer and begin the slow wind. The image jumps lightly at first, then steadies. Scratches flicker vertically. Thin rain across a tiny grey scene. You don't stop for every scratch, because not every mark can be a repair. The bench requires judgment, and judgment includes letting some small imperfections remain. A film that has lived in many projectors carries its travels like dust on shoes. Your attention returns to the sprocket holes. They are the small architecture of the reel, and when they hold, everything else has a chance to move smoothly. A ragged patch appears near an old join, and you slow the handle until the film barely moves. The sound of the rewinds fades to almost nothing. You bring the section into the block, study the frame line, and choose the place where a new splice will do the least harm. The damaged strip comes away in your hand, light as a dry leaf. You set it aside with other clippings, little fragments of scenes that will not travel farther. There is no sadness in it, not exactly. Only the understanding that keeping the whole reel alive sometimes means letting a few frames rest. You clean the ends, join them, and wait, your thumb resting on the edge of the block as the cement takes hold. While you wait, you notice the small ache at the base of your neck. Film splicing is quiet work, but quiet work still belongs to a body. Your back bends, your eyes narrow, your fingers dry from paper and stock. You shift in the chair, roll one shoulder, and let your breathing deepen before the next stretch. We stay with that ordinary body because it is the one that carries the skill. No one outside the exchange sees this posture. They see the marquee, the posters, the ticket window, the aisle lights, and the beam crossing smoke or dust above their heads. They don't see you leaning over a splice at midnight, or near midnight, or at whatever hour the work demands. That invisibility does not make the job lesser. It gives it a softness, a hidden usefulness, like a clean hinge on a door that opens without sound. The reel passes through the repaired section without catching. You mark the repair on the slip and wind onward. There is a satisfaction in that, small but real. It isn't triumph. It's more like the feeling of smoothing a bedsheet or sharpening a pencil well. Something was rough, and now it's ready to be used. The mind can rest a little when a thing has been put back into order. At the tail of the reel, you find a set of cue marks scratched into the picture area. Projectionists sometimes made or strengthened cues when they needed them clearer, though the practice could leave little marks that traveled with the print. You check whether the tail is long enough for a clean changeover. It is just long enough, but not generous. You add a note, because the next booth should know. Short tail, use care. The words are plain, and plain words are useful. The completed reel goes back into its can, and the can joins the outgoing stack. You pause with your hand on the lid, feeling its coolness. The stack does not look transformed. No one walking past would know which reels were repaired, cleaned, marked or saved from a break. That is part of the nature of tending work. Its success often looks like nothing happening, like the absence of interruption. When the clock moves further into night, we come to the quieter craft of sorting and matching, where the bench work meets the root work of the exchange. A feature may have several reels, and they must stay together, in order, with matching labels and correct shipping cards. You bring the cans closer, reading each lid under the lamp. Reel 1, Reel 2, Reel 3, Reel 4. The words are simple, but your eyes check them twice. The cans have their own small differences. One lid is dented near the rim, another has a paper label lifting at one corner. One smells faintly of damp cardboard, another of oil from a truck bed or warehouse floor. You wipe what needs wiping, and press labels flat where you can. A film's journey depends on these ordinary containers as much as on the fragile strip inside them. The can is not glamorous, but it is faithful. You compare the booking slip against the cans. A theater in Minneapolis will receive one print tomorrow, perhaps for an evening program after the newsreel and short subject. Another town will receive its reels by truck or rail, depending on route and distance. You don't need to imagine the whole journey, but sometimes you do. A can leaving your bench might sit in a projection booth by dusk, warm from the lamp of another worker's machine. The labels need clarity. especially after many trips. You take a fresh label and write the title carefully, then the reel number in words. If there is an exchange stamp, it goes where it can be seen. If a warning note is needed, it is attached firmly, but not carelessly. The paper has a dry, fibrous feel under your fingers, and the paste or gum at the edge smells faintly sweet when dampened. Even labeling has its own weather. As a Minneapolis Film Splicer, you are not only repairing film, you are preserving sequence. A reel out of order can turn a story into confusion, and a missing short can leave a program awkwardly thin. So you count, check, and check again. The rhythm is slow enough to be soothing. Title, reel, condition, destination. Title, reel, condition, destination. Not a chant, exactly, but a pattern the hands can trust. The dispatch table has a different feel from the splicing bench. It is broader, more scratched, with corners worn by cans being set down and lifted away. Under its lamp, the metal looks flatter and duller. The paperwork spreads wider here, and the smell shifts from cement to ink, paper, and old string. You tie a tag to one can, tugging the knot gently to test it, then set it in the proper group. A late driver or morning driver will depend on this sorting. So will the clerk who answers the telephone when a theater asks where a print has gone. The work connects across people who may never meet, and that connection lives inside the neatness of a label and the truth of a note. You are part of that quiet agreement. We can feel it in the way your hand slows before setting each can down. There may be a calendar on the wall, marked with bookings in firm pencil. There may be studio names on shelves, stacks from different distributors, and colored cards for different routes. The exchange is both workshop and warehouse, both office and passageway. Films come in tired and leave prepared. You stand in the middle of that movement, not stopping it, just making it more orderly as it passes through your hands. The city's own order rests nearby. Minneapolis has mills, warehouses, rail lines, streetcars, theaters, office buildings, and neighborhoods with their own evening habits. The film exchange belongs to that practical city, not above it but within it. It has stairs that creak, loading doors that stick in cold weather, and lamps that make small islands in large rooms. Your bench is one of those islands, and tonight we stay there as long as the work remains. After sorting, there is another reel to inspect, because the night always seems to keep one more task near the edge of sight. You return to the bench with a can marked for an early show. Its label is cleaner than the others, but labels can be misleading. A neat outside may hold a rough inside, and a battered can may hold a reel that runs sweetly. So you open it without assumption, letting the film tell you what it needs. The reel inside is tightly wound. Too tightly, perhaps. The outer layer sits hard and glossy, and you take extra care loosening the leader. A tight wind can hold stress in the film, especially if it has been wound quickly after a show. You ease it slowly, giving the strip room to relax. The first feet make a faint crackling sound, small and dry, and you slow your hands even further. The viewer shows a clean image at first. The frames are steady, the scratches light, the perforations sound, your shoulders lower. A reel like this can still ask for care, but it does not resist you. You let it travel across the bench, your fingers lightly guiding the edge, your eyes taking in the small signs of use. Here is a dust speck. Here is a faint line. Here is a splice that looks good enough to leave alone. There is wisdom in leaving a good splice alone. Overworking can harm as surely as neglect can. If a join is flat, strong, and clean, you let it pass. That restraint is part of craft, and your hands know it better than pride does. You do not repair for the sake of showing that you can repair. You repair because the film asks for it, and when it does not ask, you keep the reel moving. The middle of the reel brings a lovely steadiness, not lovely because of what is pictured, though the tiny scenes may be pleasant, but because the strip moves without complaint. The rewinds turn smoothly, the film lies flat, the soundtrack edge glides past unmarked. For several minutes, the work is only watching and guiding, and the mind enters a calm, narrow place where every detail matters just enough. You may think, in such moments, of all the ordinary audiences who will never know this bench. Couples stepping out of the cold, children shifting in seats, men in work coats resting after a long day, women with gloves folded in their laps. The film will reach them as light, sound, laughter, music, or news, and none of them will picture your hands turning the reel. That is all right. The work was never asking to be pictured. Near the end, a splice appears that isn't bad, only bulky. You stop and consider it. A bulky splice can thump through a projector and wear itself worse over time. It may pass tonight and fail next week. You decide to replace it while it's under your lamp, where the repair can happen calmly. The old join comes away with a faint resistance, then releases. You trim, scrape, cement, clamp, and wait. During the wait, you listen to the building. The exchange has a layered quiet, not an empty one. Paper settles, pipes tick. A chair shifts at another table. Somewhere the front door may open and close softly, bringing a brief draft that lifts the edge of a label. You feel it at your wrist, a cooler thread of air passing through the warm circle of the lamp, then gone. The new splice dries smooth. You test it and wind onward, and the reel finishes without another mark worth noting. This is a pleasant kind of completion, calm and unremarkable. You place the reel into its can, update the slip, and set it with the morning group. A small row of prepared reels now waits near the dispatch table, like lunches packed before dawn, each one wrapped for another person's day. As we move further into the sleeping hours, the history of the room begins to feel present in the worn tools around you. The splicing block has tiny scratches beside the guide pins. The scissors have a polished place where fingers have held them for years. The rewind handles are dulled where palms have turned them again and again. None of these things are old in a museum sense. They are old in the working sense, worn by usefulness. You clean the scraper edge with care. A rough tool makes rough work, and film remembers roughness. The blade catches the lamplight for a moment, then dulls as you set it down. You wipe the splicing block, clearing away gray emulsion dust and dried flecks of cement. The dust is so fine, it nearly disappears. But if left there, it can lift a join or scratch a frame. Small things matter most when the material is thin. The cement bottle needs attention too. Its cap can stick if the rim is left wet. You wipe it clean before closing it. The smell rises again, sharp for a second, and then settles into the background of the room. You've known that smell all evening, and it has become part of the pace. Open, brush, close, scrape, join, wait, wind, inspect, note. The night is made of these returning motions. There were different kinds of film stocks in those years, and a careful worker learned their feel. Some older prints were more brittle, some newer ones more pliant, and each reel asked for its own pressure. You did not need grand language for this knowledge. You learned it by touch, by the slight curl of a strip, by the sound it made when wound, by how it lay across the splicer. Your hands carried facts that no ledger could fully hold. In the 1940s Minneapolis exchange, training likely came through watching, being corrected, and doing the work under patient supervision. Someone showed you where to cut. Someone warned you not to flood a splice with cement. Someone taught you to read a frame line, to check the soundtrack, to mark a can clearly, and to keep your bench clean enough that tomorrow's repair would not inherit tonight's dust. Skill arrived in ordinary sentences. You remember those early corrections in the way your hands avoid old mistakes. Don't touch the image more than needed. Don't twist the film when lifting it. Don't trust a splice just because it looks shiny. Don't let a leader go out too short. These are not sharp warnings now. They have softened into habit, and habit is one of the kindest forms of memory in repetitive work. Another worker might have left a note beside a reel for you. Please check tail. Replace head leader if time. Sound rough but usable. The note is practical and companionable, even if the handwriting is hurried. You read it under the lamp and feel the presence of someone who stood where you stand, noticing what they could before handing the rest onward. We are often kept by such modest signals from other hands. You take the reel from that note and begin at the tail as requested. The tail leader is creased near the end, with a fold that could catch during rewind. You cut it back and join a fresh length, giving the reel a cleaner finish. The new leader slides pale and smooth under your fingers, different from the pictured film, simpler, quieter. It is there to be handled, to protect the picture, to give the projectionist room. The head leader gets the same inspection. It carries old countdown marks, maybe numbers printed or marked for threading and timing, and some marks have faded from use. You do not need the leader to look new, only to function clearly. A leader is a kindness to the booth. It gives hands time. It gives the machine a calm beginning before the image arrives. You replace what is too worn and leave what still serves. The reel itself is better than expected. A few scratches, one old splice, no serious tears. You wind it through, write your note, and place it with the others. The helpful note is crossed lightly, not erased, because the record matters. It shows that someone asked and someone answered. In a workshop, that is a small form of conversation, and it can carry a shift across hours when voices are few. At some point, you return to your cup and find it cooler than before. The coffee or tea has a dull taste now, but it warms your throat a little. You take it slowly, standing near the bench, while the lamp makes your shadow lean across the dispatch table. The room beyond the light is not dark, exactly, but it has softened at the edges. Shelves and cans become shapes more than objects until you return to them. The food you brought has the plainness of work food. Bread, perhaps cheese, perhaps cold meat, perhaps something wrapped from home and eaten without ceremony. The waxed paper crackles as you open it, loud in the quiet. You brush crumbs from your fingers before touching the next reel, because crumbs are not part of film work. The smallest care can feel almost tender when the material in front of you is so easily marked. We can stay a moment with that simple meal, because it belongs to the job as surely as the splicer does. Quiet labor is never only tools and tasks. It is also the pause taken standing up, the cup set where it won't spill, the sleeve pulled back from the wrist, the hand wiped before returning to work. These gestures don't appear on schedules, but they hold the worker together through the long middle of the shift. When you sit again, the chair feels familiar in a new way. The body has accepted the room. The first coolness of the metal cans, the first sharpness of the cement, the first stack of uncertain reels have all become the texture of the evening. Now the remaining work meets you gently, not because it is easy, but because you have entered its rhythm. You turn the next handle and the reel begins. This one is a short advertising trailer, sent from theater to theater to announce a coming attraction. Its images move quickly in the viewer, full of faces, titles, and bold lettering, but you keep your pace slow. The trailer may be short, yet it may have been handled more roughly because people think short things can tolerate haste. You know better. Every strip needs the same clean path through the projector. The trailer has many splices. Some are original, made in preparing the print. Some look like later repairs. You inspect each one, letting the film rest in your fingers when a join passes. One splice is slightly crooked, its perforations just off enough to make you uneasy. You replace it. The cut removes almost nothing, but it restores alignment, and alignment is the quiet heart of moving pictures. A film is a sequence of still images, but at your bench that idea is not abstract. You see the frames one by one, each divided from the next by a line small enough to miss if the lamp is poor. The projector will turn these stills into motion, but only if the spacing remains faithful. Your repair honors that spacing. It keeps each frame where it belongs, so the illusion can breathe without stumbling. The trailer ends with bold lettering that flashes through the viewer in miniature, far too excited for the quiet room. You smile inwardly at the contrast, then return to the leader and the label. Even the loudest advertisement becomes calm when reduced to a strip under your lamp. Its urgency is only ink and light now. waiting for someone else's projector to wake it. Here, it rests. You wind the trailer back into its can and mark it ready. Then you stretch your fingers, opening and closing them slowly. The joints feel a little stiff. The skin at your fingertips feels smooth from guiding film. A small line of grey dust rests near the base of one nail. You wipe it away with a cloth and set your hand back on the table, ready for the next piece of the night. As the hour grows later, the boundary between repair and memory can blur softly. Not memory of grand events, but memory of repeated motion. Your first week at the bench, the first time a splice failed and someone showed you why, the first time you caught a damaged section before it left the exchange. These memories do not come as scenes so much as feelings in the hand, little adjustments learned and kept. A newcomer might think the job is only cutting and gluing. You know it is more than that, though not in a way that needs speeches. It is observation, restraint, order, and care for something that will be used by strangers in the dark. It is also tolerance for repetition. Not every reel is interesting, and not every repair has a story. Still, the work asks to be done well, and that's enough reason. In Minneapolis, with the river and mills and rail lines not far from mind, this kind of hidden maintenance fits the city's working character. Many things move because someone unseen keeps them moving. Grain, paper, flour, streetcars, freight, letters, laundry, milk, and films all pass through hands that rarely appear in front of the public. Your bench belongs to that larger pattern. It is a quiet station in the travel of light. The next can opens to reveal a reel that has been wound backward. You notice at once from the leader and the way the film presents itself. This happens sometimes, and it isn't a disaster. It simply means extra handling, careful rewinding, and a note if needed. You set it properly across the rewinds and let it travel back into the right orientation. The reel turns with a soft, steady drag, as though relieved to be put in order. While rewinding, you keep watching. A backward reel can hide damage just as easily as a correct one. The film crosses the bench in the opposite sense, and your eyes adjust. The soundtrack edge, the curl, the direction of the images, all of it asks for a small recalibration. You slow down until the looking feels natural again. Good work often begins by admitting that the hand needs a moment to adjust. The reel is mostly sound, but near the middle there is a join made with too much cement. It has spread cloudy beyond the overlap, and the excess has dried into a rough shine. You stop, cut it out, and make the repair again. The old cement flakes slightly under the scraper, leaving a pale residue on the block. You clean carefully before making the new splice, because yesterday's roughness should not sit under tonight's work. The new join lies flatter. You wait for it, test it, and continue. The difference is small enough that an audience would never name it, but a projector might feel it. Machines notice what people don't. A rough splice can click, catch, or wear the gate a little more than necessary. A smooth splice passes through like a polite visitor, leaving almost no trace of itself behind. There is something restful about making things polite to machines. Not fancy, not perfect, just well-behaved enough to pass through the path made for them. You guide the film toward that state. The reel should not fight the sprockets. The leader should not surprise the projectionist. The label should not confuse the clerk. Each part of the work reduces friction, and less friction is a kind of peace. When the reel is oriented correctly, you wind it once more for neatness. This second pass is faster, but not careless. The layers settle more evenly now, and the edge of the wound reel becomes smooth under your eye. You secure it and note that it arrived backward. The note is not a complaint, it is a fact placed where a fact belongs, so the root of the film remains understandable. The outgoing stack is now taller than the incoming one, which is a quiet encouragement. You don't celebrate it, you simply notice. The room itself seems to notice too, with more open space on the floor and fewer uncertain cans near the bench. Work changes the shape of a room as it progresses. Disorder gathers at one side, passes through the hands and leaves as order at the other. And as the deepest part of night comes on, we turn toward the part of the job that is almost housekeeping, though housekeeping is too small a word for it. The bench must be made ready, the scraps contained, the slips filed, and the reels placed where they can be found before morning. You begin with the scraps, gathering the little curled pieces of film from the tray and the bench edge. They are light, springy, and oddly lively in the hand. Some scraps hold parts of faces, some hold only black leader or overexposed frames. Some are no wider than a breath of time. You do not linger over them, but you don't scatter them either. Film scraps left loose can cling, scratch, or confuse. You place them in the proper container, clearing the bench until the wood shows again beneath the lamplight. The surface looks calmer once it is free of fragments. You wipe the bench in slow passes. The cloth gathers dust, emulsion powder, tiny dried flakes of cement, and the day's fine grit. Your hand follows the grain of the wood, and the motion is soothing after so much exact work. A clean bench is a promise to the next reel. It says that nothing accidental will be waiting there. It says the work can begin again without first untangling what was left behind. The rewinds need a glance too. You check that the spindles turn freely and that no bit of torn leader has caught near the base. The handles have a slight resistance from use, familiar and steady. You turn each one once, listening. No grinding, no wobble worth noting. The tool is ready. In a place like this, readiness is not dramatic. It is simply the condition that lets morning begin without trouble. Your paperwork forms a small stack now, each slip tied to a can, a repair, a route, or a warning. You straighten the edges and place them in their tray. Paper has its own sound at night, dry and faintly rasping. The pencil goes back where it belongs. The eraser crumbs are brushed away. The ledger, if there is one open, receives the last marks of the shift in writing that may look ordinary, but holds the evening's quiet labor. Still, before everything is put away, one final inspection is needed for the reels leaving earliest. You walk to the dispatch stack and read the labels again. Not because you distrust yourself, but because fatigue can make the eyes skip what they think they know. Title: Reel 1, Reel 2, Reel 3, Short Subject, Trailer, Destination. The order is correct. Your hand touches each lid lightly, like counting steps in a familiar stairwell. The metal of the cans has taken on the room's coolness. Against your palm, each lid feels firm, slightly dusty, and real. These objects will leave soon, while the repairs inside remain hidden. That hiddenness is the nature of the film splicer's contribution. You prepare the reels, and then you let them go. The next part of their life belongs to drivers, booths, machines, and audiences breathing together in the dark. You return to the bench and lower yourself into the chair once more. Though the main work is nearly done, the lamp still shines on the splicing block. The tools sit in their places. For a few breaths, you only look. We can let the room be what it is, without hurrying it into meaning. A workroom after labor has a tenderness of its own, especially when the work has been quiet and exact. There is a faint ring of cement on the bottleneck despite your wiping, so you clean it again. The cap turns smoothly this time. The scissors close once, gently, and you set them down. The viewer's lamp is checked and then left alone for the moment. These gestures might seem unnecessary to someone passing through, but you know how small neglect multiplies. A tool cared for tonight saves a delay tomorrow. The stool or chair scrapes softly as you stand. You gather the finished cans and move them in 2 trips, because carrying too many at once is a good way to drop one. The weight pulls at your fingers, and the handles bite slightly where metal edges press through skin. You set the cans down carefully on the dispatch shelf. Their labels face outward, readable, orderly, calm. The shelf looks ready now. A can from the incoming side catches your eye, not because it needs work tonight, but because its label has nearly come loose. You press it back, then decide to replace it before it falls away. This is not part of the planned task, but it belongs to the same spirit. A lost label can make a simple morning difficult. You write a clean one, attach it, and smooth it with the side of your thumb. The small rescue disappears into usefulness. The exchange may keep older labels, shipping tags, paste, string, and repair supplies in drawers that smell of paper and dust. You open one now, returning the unused labels to their place. The drawer slides with a wooden murmur. Inside, the stacked papers are not perfectly square, but they are close enough. You straighten them anyway, because your hands have not quite left the rhythm of order. At this hour, the city beyond the building feels both near and far. You may hear a late streetcar again, or a truck downshifting, or footsteps passing beneath the windows. Minneapolis is not asleep all at once. It sleeps in layers, with some rooms dark, some kitchens lit, some workers beginning before others have finished. Your own layer is here, among reels and labels, among films waiting for their next beam of light. The heating pipes make a small knocking sound that travels along the wall. The sound fades, returns, and fades again. You listen without needing to interpret it. Workrooms are full of such familiar noises, and over time they become as soothing as weather. The bench lamp warms the back of your hand. The air near the floor remains cooler. The smell of film is gentler now that the cement bottle is closed. You might glance toward a poster leaned against a wall, or a stack of publicity stills waiting for delivery. These belong to the public face of the pictures, the bright promise placed in theater lobbies. They are larger, cleaner, and more dramatic than the strips you handle, but tonight they are just paper in the corner. The true work has been smaller than a poster, smaller than a photograph, as narrow as a line of perforations under your thumb. A film splicer learns that scale can be misleading. The large image on the screen depends on the tiny frame. The smooth evening depends on the small splice. The theater's confidence depends on a label tied correctly in a quiet room. You have spent the night among small things that become large only when they fail or when they join together. That knowledge is practical, but it also softens the way you see the world. There is still a return tray to check, because a reel can hide under a slip or behind another can. You walk the few steps and look carefully. The tray holds only paperwork now, no forgotten reel, no loose leader needing attention. You gather the papers and set them in order. The floor near the bench has a few bits of thread from shipping tags, a paper corner, perhaps a speck of dried paste. You sweep them into your hand and drop them away. The cleanup has its own pace, and we don't hurry it. After long inspection, broad motions feel restful. Wiping, sorting, lifting, setting down, closing drawers, aligning cans. These tasks let the eyes relax from frame lines and sprocket holes. They let the mind widen again to the whole room. The bench is no longer the only world. The shelves, door, windows, table and dispatch area return gently to view. You turn off the viewer first, and the small screen goes dark. The bench lamp remains, so the room does not vanish suddenly. The absence of the viewer's glow changes the bench. The splicing block looks heavier. The rewinds look stiller. The film path is empty now, just a span of wood between two metal arms. You can almost hear the missing whisper of film, because you have heard it for so many hours. There may be a log for the lamp, or there may simply be habit. You check that nothing warm sits near scraps or paper. Nitrate film, especially older stock, has rules around care, storage, and heat. And though tonight has held no drama, respect is woven into the way you work. Cans stay closed. Scraps go where they belong. Lamps are not left carelessly. Calm work is not careless work. It is attention without alarm. You set the last scraps container aside and close the lid. The motion is final for that task, but not final for the night. There is always another little thing to notice. A shipping card slightly out of place. A pencil on the wrong table. A leader roll that should be covered. You attend to each one as it appears, not with annoyance, but with the steady acceptance of someone finishing a room properly. The leader stock rests in a roll, pale and plain. You cover it or return it to a drawer, so dust won't settle on its surface. Tomorrow, some length of it will become a beginning or an ending for another reel. It waits without story. That is its purpose. Not every material at the film splicer's bench carries images. Some materials exist to protect the images, and their plainness is part of their grace. Your chair is pushed in. The slips are stacked. The cans are sorted. The tools are clean. Yet the room still holds the echo of movement, the invisible trace of film passing through your hands. You can feel it in your fingers even when they are empty, a memory of smooth edges and tiny perforations. The body continues the work for a little while after the work stops, turning a phantom handle in the quiet. A co-worker may pass by and ask in a low voice whether the early reels are ready. You answer simply, yes, on the dispatch shelf. No flourish is needed. The answer carries the whole night inside it, but only as work completed. They nod, perhaps make a mark on a card, perhaps move toward another table. The exchange is held together by these small confirmations, by ordinary trust spoken in ordinary words. You take one more look at the outgoing shelf. The Minneapolis bookings are together. The out-of-town route is separate. The reels with notes have their notes attached. The short subjects sit with the proper features. Nothing leans too far. Nothing blocks the labels. Nothing looks uncertain. Your eyes move slowly across the shelf and find no reason to reach out again. That is a peaceful kind of seeing. The lamp over the bench can be lowered or switched off now, depending on the fixture. Before you do, you let its light rest once more on the wood. The scratches, stains, and worn places show clearly. This bench has held many nights, and it will hold many more. You are only one worker in its long use, but tonight your hands have belonged to it fully. The thought is not grand, it is grounding. When the lamp goes off, the room changes by degrees. Other lights still remain, perhaps near the dispatch table or office door, so darkness does not drop all at once. The bench becomes a shape, the tools become silhouettes, the cans hold a dull gray shine. Your eyes adjust, and the air seems cooler without the lamp's small sun. The smell of film remains, faint and steady, like the room's own breath. You wash your hands if there is a basin nearby, or wipe them carefully if that is what the room offers. The water, if present, feels cool against skin warmed by the lamp. Gray dust lifts from the fingers. The smell of cement fades, but does not disappear entirely. You dry your hands on a towel that has seen many such evenings. Rough cotton against the palms. Ordinary and welcome. Your coat waits near the door, carrying the cooler smell of the hallway. You put it on slowly, feeling the weight settle across your shoulders. The pockets may hold a streetcar token, keys, a folded note, or nothing more than lint and the day's small receipts. Work clothes and street clothes meet for a moment. The film splicer becomes the person walking home, though the bench remains in the hands a little longer. Before leaving the room, you check the dispatch shelf one last time from the doorway. Distance helps the eye sometimes. From here, you can see whether anything sits out of place in the larger pattern. The cans form their quiet groups. The labels face outward. The table is clear. The room is ready for the next part of its own routine, when morning light, clerks, drivers, and more reels will begin the motion again. The hallway beyond the exchange may smell of old varnish, cold plaster, and the faint smoke that clings to city buildings in the 1940s. Your footsteps sound different here than they did on the workroom floor. Less wood, more echo. A door closes softly behind you, and the film smell thins but follows a little on your sleeves. We move with you, still quietly, because the job does not end sharply. It fades outward. Downstairs, or along the corridor, the building holds other closed rooms, offices, storage spaces, perhaps another tenant's workshop, all resting behind dark glass or painted doors. The city outside waits beyond the entrance. You can feel the temperature changing before you reach it. A cooler draft near the threshold, a trace of pavement and night air. Your eyes are tired in the way that comes from close work, but the wider darkness asks less of them. If it is winter, the Minneapolis air meets you with a clean, firm cold that clears the last warmth of the lamp from your face. If it is another season, the night may be damp or mild, or carrying the smell of the river and street dust. Whatever the weather, you step into it slowly. The workroom stays behind, but the outgoing reels are still inside, ready for trucks, counters, booths, and beams of light. The street at this hour has its own quiet industry. A delivery truck may idle near a curb. A street lamp hums above a wet patch of pavement. Somewhere, a late diner window glows, and inside it someone lifts a cup with both hands. You notice these things with the same attention you brought to film, not because they need repair, but because the night has trained you to see edges, labels, small motions, and the way light rests on surfaces. You might pass a theater poster on your way home, perhaps advertising one of the prints that crossed your bench earlier in the week. The faces are large, bright, and confident behind the glass. You know the other side of that brightness. You know the reels, the scratches, the leaders, the notes, the cans, and the bench. The poster promises a story. Your work has helped the story arrive without announcing itself. A streetcar stop may be nearby, or you may walk several blocks through the sleeping city. The pavement feels firm under your tired feet. The buildings rise dark above you, with a few lit windows here and there. Minneapolis at night is not empty. It is held by watchmen, drivers, cleaners, bakers, nurses, clerks, and other workers whose shifts cross quietly in the dark. You are one of them, carrying the calm residue of film work into the street. If you ride home, the streetcar has its own rhythm: metal wheels, overhead wire, low voices, and the warm smell of damp coats. You sit with your hands folded or resting on your knees, and your fingers still remember the motion of the rewinds. The city passes in dark windows. A lighted sign slides by. A corner turns. The ride becomes another kind of reel, moving steadily from one frame of streetlight to the next. You may not speak much after a shift like this. Close work leaves the mind quiet. It has spent hours looking for small damage, making small choices, and keeping small promises to people you may never meet. There is no need to explain that to every person beside you. The silence is not loneliness. It is simply the space left after careful attention, and it can feel soft if no one tries to fill it too quickly. At home, whenever home comes, the smell of the exchange may still be faintly present. It clings to the cuffs, a trace of paper, metal, and film. You hang the coat, set down your things, and perhaps wash your hands again, watching the water run clear. The bench is behind you now, but tomorrow or the next shift will bring the same world back. Cans, labels, leader, cement, light, and the long narrow ribbon waiting to be tended. For now, though, we stay with the memory of the bench rather than leave it completely. The splicing block sits clean in the dark room. The rewinds are still. The outgoing cans rest on their shelf. Inside each one, the repaired film lies wound in a tight circle, frame against frame, waiting for motion. Nothing in the cans moves, yet each reel holds the possibility of a room filling with light. Morning will come to the exchange in a practical way. Doors opening, footsteps, voices, shipping lists. The scrape of cans being lifted. The reels you prepared will be taken from the shelf, checked against their cards, and sent out into the city's routes. A driver may not know which splices are new. A clerk may only see that the notes are clear. That is enough. The work has entered the system of the day. Somewhere, later, a projectionist will open one of those cans. Their booth will smell different from your exchange. Warmer perhaps, with machine oil, dust, and the dry heat of the projector lamp. Their hands will lift the leader you replaced and thread it through rollers, sprockets, gate, soundhead, and take-up reel. If your splice passes cleanly, they may never think of it. The movie will begin, and your night's care will become invisible. That invisibility is not disappearance. It is completion of a certain kind. The work has done what it was meant to do when it no longer asks to be noticed. The splice holds. The reel turns. The label guides. The leader gives enough length. The can arrives where it should. We can feel the steadiness of that, the way hidden labor supports public ease without needing to step into the light. And when the projector beam opens across the theater, it carries many kinds of work inside it. Studio work, laboratory work, shipping work, booth work, cleaning work, ticket work, and your bench work in the Minneapolis exchange. The audience sees only the picture, which is fair. They came for the picture. Yet beneath the picture is a chain of patient hands. And tonight we have stayed with one pair of them long enough to feel their rhythm. The thought can drift softly now, back and forth between the theater and the bench. In the theater, seats creak, coats rustle, and the projector hums. At the bench, the lamp warms the wood, the cement dries, and the rewind handle turns. In both places, darkness and light work together. In both places, people trust a narrow strip of film to carry them somewhere for a while, then bring them back. Your part remains modest, and that modesty is restful. You are not asked to transform the city. You are asked to inspect this reel, mend this splice, replace this leader, write this note, and place this can on the proper shelf. One task leads to the next, and the next leads gently onward. The mind can loosen inside such a pattern, because it doesn't need to leap ahead. It only needs to stay with the work at hand. If we return in thought to the exchange before dawn, everything is still in its place. The dispatch shelf waits. The bench waits. The labels wait with their clean penciled words. Dust settles slowly where the cloth did not quite reach, and the closed cement bottle holds its sharp scent inside. The room is not empty in a lonely way. It is simply between shifts, resting in the shape that work has given it. There is a particular quiet in a room where useful things are ready. It differs from the quiet of abandonment. The tools are not forgotten. The cans are not lost. The papers are not scattered. Everything has been arranged for return, for continuation, for hands that will arrive after sleep or before breakfast. A good workroom at rest feels like a sentence paused at a comma, not ended, only waiting for breath. So we let the bench remain there, under whatever light the early morning gives it through the windows. Perhaps the sky over Minneapolis is just beginning to pale, turning the glass from black to gray. Perhaps the first sounds of trucks and streetcars are rising. The reels are ready to leave, and the splicers' hands are elsewhere now, resting. But the care they left behind is still present in the smoothness of each wound reel. Later, when the exchange wakes, no one may say much about the night's repairs. Someone will lift the cans, someone will check the cards, someone will carry the root stack toward the door. The work will be absorbed into movement. That is how such labor lives, not as a display, but as readiness passing into use. We can follow it quietly for a little while longer, from shelf to hand, from hand to truck, from truck to booth. The cans in the morning are heavier than they looked at night, or perhaps the morning hands are simply different hands. They knock softly against one another when lifted. The labels brush against coat sleeves. The metal has taken on the chill of the room. A driver reads the destinations, sorts them by route, and carries them out with the practiced balance of someone who knows not to let a reel bang against a door frame. The truck or car that carries the films has its own smells. Gasoline, cold vinyl or worn upholstery, paper route sheets, damp canvas, and the metal scent of cans stacked in back. Your splices ride there unseen. They feel the turns, the stops, the rough places in the road. The repaired joins hold quietly through all of it. No one praises them. They don't require praise. Their work is simply to remain joined. A Minneapolis theater receiving the reels may be only a few streets away, or farther along a route where neighborhoods change gradually through shop fronts, houses, factories, and open stretches. At the theater door, the cans are taken in, perhaps set near the lobby for a moment, then carried toward stairs that lead to the projection booth. The building has its own smell. Carpet, polish, old smoke, popcorn, dust, and the faint heat of lamps waiting to be lit. In the booth, another worker opens the can you closed. The leader you attached comes free smoothly. The note you wrote is read, perhaps nodded at, perhaps tucked aside. The reel is mounted. The film begins its path through rollers and sprockets, and for the first time since your bench, it moves under power instead of by hand. The machine asks more of it than you did. It asks steadiness at speed, and the reel answers as well as it can. When your repaired splice reaches the gate, it passes in less than a breath. There may be a small click, or nothing at all. The audience below does not stir. The story continues. That is the moment your night has been preparing, though you are nowhere near it. We can imagine it only gently, without making it larger than it is. A splice passes, a picture continues. A room remains inside its evening. Back at the exchange, more cans will already be arriving. The cycle does not stop because one night ended. Returned reels wait for inspection, and new bookings need preparation. The bench will gather scraps again. The cement bottle will open. A fresh leader will be measured against an old one. The same motions will repeat. Not exactly the same, because each reel has its own wear, but familiar enough to become a kind of working lullaby. For the film splicer, repetition is not emptiness. It is where skill settles. The first splice of a career may feel awkward and large, but the thousandth becomes almost a conversation between hand and material. You don't need to tell your fingers every instruction. They know where the frame line should be, how much pressure to use, how long to wait before testing. The mind watches, but the hands remember. This remembered skill is quiet knowledge, and quiet knowledge often lives outside written history. Records may keep titles, dates, bookings, and costs, but they rarely keep the feel of a worn rewind handle or the patience needed to scrape emulsion without gouging the base. They don't keep the smell of the bench after midnight. They don't keep the way fatigue makes a careful worker slow down rather than hurry. So we hold those details here, softly, because they belong to the truth of the job. The 1940s brought many kinds of films through a Minneapolis exchange. Features, newsreels, training films, shorts, trailers, perhaps wartime material in the earlier part of the decade, then post-war programs and neighborhood entertainments after. To you at the bench, each one arrived in practical form, not as glamour, not as history, but as a reel that could be nicked, mislabeled, over-tightened, shortened, repaired, and sent out again. That practical form keeps the story grounded. A film is not only art when it reaches your hands. It is an object with edges. It has weight, smell, curl, brittleness, and a tendency to remember rough handling. Your work honors the object, so the picture can survive its travels. This is a kind of devotion. Though you might never call it that. You might only say you're checking reels, because that is the language work usually uses for devotion. At the bench, the physical world keeps correcting any grandness. The scissors must be sharp. The cement must not thicken too much. The pins in the splicer must match the perforations. The reel must wind evenly. The label must stay on the can. These facts are plain, and their plainness is soothing. They give the night a shape that can be trusted. One small requirement after another. If a young worker stood beside you, learning, you might show them how to hold the film by the edges. You might guide their hand away from the picture area and tell them to let the strip lie flat before cutting. You might point out the frame line, the soundtrack, the perforations, and the slight difference between a splice that looks strong and one that truly lies well. Your teaching would likely be quiet, because the room itself teaches slowly too. You would let them make a practice splice on leader first. The leader would not punish mistakes the way picture might. They would scrape too much or too little, brush on too much cement, press unevenly, and then learn. You would not need harshness. The failed splice explains itself when it lifts, clouds, or catches. The good splice explains itself too, lying smooth under a finger, passing cleanly through the hand. There is a calm generosity in a craft that can be taught by objects. The film, the tool, and the result all speak if the learner is patient enough to notice. You learned that once, and now your hands carry it forward. Not every worker becomes a master, and not every shop has time for perfect teaching, but skill still moves from person to person in glances, corrections, and borrowed gestures. The bench holds all of that. As the day after your shift unfolds, someone might discover one of your notes and be grateful in a very ordinary way. The sound scratch is marked. The short tail is known. The repaired reel runs better than expected. Such gratitude may never come back to you, but the system feels it. A little confusion is avoided. A little time is saved. A little irritation does not have to happen. There is peace in preventing small troubles from blooming. And when evening returns, another audience enters another theater, shaking off weather at the door. They buy tickets, find seats, settle coats, and let the lights dim. Above them, the film begins its passage. Your repaired frames move through the projector, too fast for anyone to honor individually, yet each one belongs to the whole. The beam widens. Dust crosses it like soft weather. The screen receives the picture, and the room becomes still. We don't need to follow the story on the screen. That belongs to the people in the seats. Our story remains in the work that let the story run. The splice near the middle passes. The leader change at the head helped the projectionist thread cleanly. The note about the tail prevented a hurried surprise. These are small kindnesses traveling invisibly through the mechanics of an evening. The film may come back again after that show, warmer, looser, perhaps with a new scratch or another note. It may return to the same Minneapolis exchange, or move along a different route. The cycle begins once more. A can opens, a reel is mounted, a lamp warms a bench, a worker's fingers find the edge. Nothing about this cycle asks for excitement, and that is why it can carry us gently toward rest. To be a 1940s Minneapolis film splicer is to live near light without standing in it. You prepare what others will see. You hold the fragile part before it becomes public. You mend the place where the picture might break. The work is repetitive, yes, but repetition is not dull when the senses are awake to it. Metal coolness, paper dryness, cement sharpness, lamp warmth, film smoothness, and the low whisper of rewinds all gather into one steady world. That world has its own boundaries. The bench lamp defines the center. The shelves define the supply. The dispatch table defines the leaving. The doorway defines the rest of the city beyond. Within those boundaries, you know what to do. You don't need to solve everything at once. You only need the next reel, the next inspection, the next careful cut, the next small wait while the cement sets. The more we stay with it, the more the job becomes almost meditative. Not because it is detached from life, but because it is deeply attached to one narrow material reality. Film must be touched correctly. Tools must be returned. Notes must be legible. The mind rests from large questions by entering small, answerable ones. Is the edge clean? Does the splice hold? Is the leader long enough? Is the can marked? The questions come softly, and one by one, you answer them with your hands. Even fatigue has a place in this rhythm, if it is respected. When your eyes tire, you pause and look away. When your fingers stiffen, you stretch them. When the reel resists, you slow down. The work teaches you not to confuse speed with competence. A rushed repair can travel badly through many hands. A careful repair, made a little more slowly, can disappear into smoothness for everyone after you. There is no need to romanticize every minute. Some reels are stubborn, some notes are vague, some labels peel, some cans dent, some splices fail from earlier haste. Your back can ache, and your eyes can burn, and the smell of cement can become too familiar. Warm realism leaves room for that. The comfort is not that the work is effortless. The comfort is that the work is knowable, and that care makes a visible difference. A knowable job can be a shelter in a noisy world. At the bench, problems arrive in forms you can hold. Torn leader, weak splice, loose label, dust, wrong order, short tail. Each one has a response. Not always a perfect one, but a response. You bring the reel under the lamp, use the tool suited to the trouble, and let the result be enough. That steady sufficiency is deeply calming when the night is long. If snow is falling outside, it may soften the city while you work. The windows would show only dark glass and faint white movement near the street lamps. The exchange would feel warmer by contrast, even with drafts under doors. You might hear boots in the hall, the shake of a coat, the low complaint of someone coming in from the cold. Then the rain would settle again, and the reels would continue crossing the bench. If rain is falling, the cans might arrive damp on the outside, wiped quickly before being opened. The air would smell of wet wool, pavement and cardboard. You would be careful that no moisture reached the film. The city would hiss beyond the windows, tires passing through street water, gutters running quietly. Inside, your lamp would hold its amber circle, and the film would shine faintly as it moved from reel to reel. If the night is dry and mild, the windows might be cracked slightly, and distant sounds would come more clearly. Voices from the street, a car door, the faint bell of a streetcar. The work would still be the same. Film, bench, hand, light. Weather changes the room's edges, but the center holds. That is one of the pleasures of a steady trade. It gives the day a place to return to, whatever the city brings. Your own thoughts during the shift may be plain ones. What needs to be finished before morning? Whether there is enough leader stock, whether the coffee is still warm, whether the streetcar home will be crowded. Sometimes a picture from the film lingers in your mind. A face or a landscape glimpsed in miniature, but it usually fades behind the next repair. The job does not require you to carry the stories, only the reels. Yet the stories brush against you. How could they not? 100 tiny scenes pass through your fingers, and even without sound, they leave traces. A child running, a door opening, a hand lifting a glass, a train arriving, a city street, not your city, yet familiar in its lights and shadows. You let them pass, and the bench teaches you a gentle distance, close enough to care for the film, far enough not to be taken away by it. This distance is part of the calm. You serve the picture without being swallowed by it. You notice the material before the drama, the frame line before the emotion, the splice before the scene. For sleep, that is a helpful way of seeing. It lets the mind stay near the world without being pulled into urgency. Everything remains touchable, specific, and manageable under the lamp. The film exchange itself might have had windows facing an alley, a side street, or another brick building. The view may not have been much. That is all right. Workrooms do not need grand views to hold rich detail. The richness is in the chipped paint near a shelf, the chalk mark on a crate, the circle left by a coffee cup, the way dust gathers along the back of a table, where hands rarely reach. You know which drawers stick. You know which lids need a firmer thumb. You know which lamp flickers before settling. You know where extra cores are stored, where the string is kept, where the better pencils hide. Such knowledge is humble, but it makes the room yours in practice. A workplace becomes familiar through solved inconveniences, through the little map your body keeps without needing to draw it. A new person might enter and see clutter. You see stations, incoming, inspection, repair, dispatch, supplies. You see the route from shelf to bench, to paperwork to outgoing stack. You see where a reel should pause and where it should not. This kind of seeing is earned by repetition. It is not glamorous, but it is deeply competent, and competence can be as soothing as lamplight when it moves quietly. The cans themselves tell stories through wear. A dent near the rim suggests a drop or a hard ride. A scraped bottom says it has slid across many floors. A label layered over older labels shows the life of a traveling print. Rust at an edge might mean damp storage somewhere along the route. You don't need to turn these clues into drama. You simply let them inform your care, as a good worker always does. When opening a can, you keep the lid close, not tossed aside. When removing a reel, you support it evenly. When setting it down, you avoid grit. These gestures repeat until they become almost ceremonial, though no one calls them that. The ceremony of work is practical. It's the set of motions that protect the material and steady the worker at the same time. There are days when the bench might see educational films or industrial films, not only entertainment. A factory safety reel, a school program, a civic announcement, or a training picture might pass through your hands. The content changes, but the care does not. A torn splice in a training film can interrupt a lesson, just as surely as a broken feature can interrupt a romance. The film splicer's respect is given to the strip before the subject. You may have preferences, of course. Everyone does. Some prints are easier to handle. Some distributors label better. Some reels come back tidier from certain houses. Some stocks feel kinder under the fingers. But you keep those preferences quiet and continue the work. Professional calm is not the absence of opinions. It is the ability to do careful work whether the reel is pleasing or troublesome. If the bench had a radio nearby, it might play softly at times, though perhaps not when concentration is needed. A low voice, a song barely above the room tone, news from far away reduced to a murmur behind the turning reels. You might turn it down when inspecting a difficult section. The film has its own sound, and sometimes you need that sound more than any broadcast. Tonight, in our telling, the room itself is radio enough. The late-night guide beside you, the one we keep gently present, notices how the work gathers the listener inward. Not inward into worry, but inward into touch and breath. Your fingers guide the film. Your eyes rest on the light, your shoulders lower between tasks. The repetition is not a trap. It is a path laid down in small motions, easy to follow, easy to leave when sleep finally comes. And still the bench remains, ready for another reel in memory if not in the actual night. We can imagine lifting one more can, feeling its weight, reading its label, and hearing the lid loosen. We can imagine the leader sliding free, pale against the darker coil. We can imagine the first turn of the rewind handle, the tiny clicks of perforations, and the lamplight spreading across the strip like a warm hand. This imagined reel needs only light inspection. It has traveled well. The edges are clean. The splices are few and sound. You let it pass from left to right, giving it the same attention you gave the damaged reels, because care is not reserved for trouble. Care is a way of meeting whatever arrives. A good reel deserves to be known as good. You wind it, note it, and return it to its can. The ease of such a reel is a gift late in the shift. It lets your hands move without strain. It lets your mind rest inside confidence. Not every task has to challenge you to be worthwhile. Some tasks simply confirm that order remains possible, that things can arrive intact, be checked, and move onward. There is deep quiet in that confirmation, especially when the hour is soft and the city is half asleep. The can closes. The label is read. The stack receives one more prepared reel. Somewhere in the future, the projector will receive it too. Between those moments lies transport, handling, threading, and showtime, all the usual steps. You do not need to own them. You have completed your portion and left it ready for the next hands. That handoff is one of the oldest comforts in work. I have done my part, and now it can continue. We let that thought settle without turning it into an ending. The night still has depth. The city still has unseen workers moving through it. The exchange still holds shelves of reels that will be opened another time. Your hands still remember the smooth strip and the tiny teeth of perforations. The lamp may be off, or it may still glow in memory, but the rhythm remains available, slow and even, whenever we return to the bench. In that rhythm, the Minneapolis Film Splicer's world becomes clear again. A metal can, a paper label, a narrow strip, a careful cut, a brush of cement, a pause, a test, a real wound smooth. Each element is ordinary, and each one matters. The calm comes from letting ordinary things matter without forcing them to become grand. It comes from trusting the small task in front of you. The next time a film crosses a screen, no one in the audience will know how many hands made the crossing possible. That is fine. The audience has its own part to play, which is to sit together and receive the light. Your part is back in the exchange, where the light is smaller, closer, and warmer over the bench. Both kinds of light belong to the same world, and tonight we have chosen the quieter one, so we remain near the bench a little longer, in the after image of the shift. The room is calm. The tools are resting. The cans are arranged. Outside, Minneapolis breathes in its layered sleep and work, its streets holding lamps, tracks, doorways, and windows. Inside, the repaired reels wait without sound, each splice hidden inside the wind, each label facing outward, each route prepared for morning. Morning, when it comes to the exchange, does not erase the night work so much as lift it into motion. The prepared cans are taken from the shelf, and their labels face the room with the quiet usefulness you left there. Someone reads them in a low voice, checking destinations against a card, and your clear pencil marks make that reading easy. You are not at the bench in this moment, perhaps, but the care of your hands remains in the way the morning moves without snagging. The first light through the windows is thin and gray, touching the metal cans without warming them. Dust shows in the air now, where night had hidden it, and the dispatch table looks more worn in daylight. A clerk separates the Minneapolis deliveries from the longer routes. The cans make soft hollow sounds as they are lifted. Each one holds its repaired reel, its fresh leader, its note, or simply its steadiness, waiting to become useful somewhere else. If you are on the early shift instead, you arrive while the building is still waking. Your coat carries outdoor air into the exchange, and your hands are cool when you first touch the bench. The room smells different before a full day of opened cans and cement bottles. It smells of old paper, settled dust, cold metal, and the faint sleeping trace of film stock inside closed tins. You turn on the lamp, and the bench becomes yours again. There is a small ritual in preparing to splice before the first reel opens. You check the block, the scissors, the cement, the leader roll, and the rewinds, even if another worker left them clean. This is not suspicion. It is orientation. A worker comes into a room by touching its tools, learning the condition of the day through the fingertips. The metal feels a little cold at first, and the wooden bench holds the chill of the morning. The first can of the day might be one returned late from a theater that ran a final show past midnight. Its label has been marked in haste, and a folded note is tucked under the lid. You read it slowly before lifting the reel. Break near tail, temporary repair in booth. That tells you what to expect. Projectionists make emergency splices when they must, often under pressure, with the audience waiting or the schedule pulling at their sleeves. You open the can and find the booth repair almost exactly where the note promised. It is rough but honest, a join made to get through the show. You can see the haste in it. Edges slightly misaligned, cement spread wider than needed, frames cut without perfect comfort. You do not judge the hand that made it. In a hot booth, with the machine waiting and the program running, a rough repair can be a necessary bridge. At the bench, you can give that bridge a calmer replacement. You cut away the temporary join, saving as much picture as you can, and lay the fresh ends in the block. The emulsion scrapes away in fine grey curls. The cement brush leaves a narrow glisten. You press the clamp down and wait, giving the repair the time the booth did not have. We can feel the difference between emergency and workshop care in that brief pause. When the splice dries, it lies flatter than the old one. You test it, wind it past the viewer, and mark the note as repaired. This is one of the quiet partnerships in film work. The projectionist keeps the show going in the moment, and the film splicer restores the print afterward. The two jobs rarely share the same room, yet they depend on one another as surely as left and right hands. The reel continues through inspection, and you notice the tail leader has been shortened by the break. You add a fresh length, measuring enough for handling and rewind, then join it cleanly. The new leader has a milky look under the morning lamp, pale against the darker coil of picture. It feels smoother than the older stock. Your fingers guide it into place, and the reel seems more complete when the tail is properly protected. By mid-morning, if the exchange is busy, the room gathers more voices and movement, but the bench keeps its own circle of quiet. Clerks call destinations. A telephone rings. A driver asks where a certain print has been placed. Yet when you lean over the splicer, the world narrows again to the strip under your hands. Your work allows noise around it without becoming noisy itself, and that is part of the discipline. You learn to answer briefly when someone asks a question, then return without losing your place. Reel 2 is on the side shelf. The trailer needs a leader. The Duluth route is still missing one short. These answers rise from the same careful attention that reads film edges. A film exchange depends on memory, paper, labels, and habit working together. You become one of the places where those things meet. Sometimes a reel arrives without a clear complaint, only a general note that it ran rough. Ran rough can mean many things. It can mean bad splices, torn perforations, dust, warping, a poor wind, or trouble that belonged more to a projector than to the print. You do not hurry to decide. You mount the reel, thread the leader, and let the film tell its story in its own slow language of edges, sounds, and light. The first section runs well. The second shows slight cupping, the strip no longer lying perfectly flat. You feel it lift against your fingers. The viewer shows no obvious break, but the film's body has changed. Perhaps it was stored poorly, perhaps it met too much heat, perhaps age has begun to speak through the stock. You note it carefully because not all problems can be repaired with a cut and a brush. You may clean the reel, replace a weak splice, and improve the leader, but you cannot make warped film new. This kind of limit is familiar in the work. It does not make the bench useless. It simply defines what care can do. You write warped slightly, runs with care, and you write it plainly enough that no one expects miracles from the next booth. Honesty is part of maintenance. It prevents confusion from pretending to be hope. The material teaches you where repair ends and respect begins. Some film can be strengthened, some can be cleaned, some can only be handled gently until it is no longer fit for use. Your hands learn these distinctions by small signs, by the stiffness of a curl, by the brittleness of an edge, by the way a splice refuses to lie flat. We stay with those signs because they are the true language of the bench. A reel with many old repairs has a different rhythm under inspection. It stops you again and again, asking for judgment at each join. Replace this one, leave that one. Note the next. Clean near the head, add leader at the tail. The work becomes less like a straight road and more like walking through a familiar room in dim light, pausing where the floorboards creak. You know how to move because you've moved there before. The cumulative effect of many splices can shorten a print. Frame by frame, break by break, repair by repair. A film loses tiny bits of itself. You are aware of that loss, though you do not dwell on it heavily. Your care is conservative. You remove only what must go. A careless worker might cut broadly to save time, but your hand stays close, choosing the narrowest clean place where the repair can hold. There is a tenderness in that restraint. It is not sentimental. It is practical tenderness, the kind that keeps a working object in service without pretending it has not aged. The reel comes to you with its life already marked, and you add the smallest mark necessary. Then you let it continue. That pattern is gentle enough to rest inside, especially when the lamp is warm and the room has found its daytime hum. The sound of the rewinds varies with each reel. A tight reel pulls with a faint strain. A loose one flutters more softly. A clean reel whispers evenly, while a rough edge ticks under your thumb. You do not need to name each sound aloud. Your body knows them. The ear works beside the eye and the hand, and together they make a kind of quiet inspection that no single sense could manage alone. The smell of the work also changes through the day. Early on, paper and dust are strongest. After several repairs, cement sharpens the air near the bench. If many cans are opened, the film stock smell deepens, with a warm, dry chemical note that clings to shelves and sleeves. Coffee joins it. Damp wool joins it in winter. In summer, street heat and open windows add brick, tar, and river air. The exchange becomes a mixture only a worker would know. Your fingers find a torn perforation near the head of a reel, just where threading has placed repeated stress. The tear is small, but it could grow. You stop, bring it into the block, and consider whether a splice is needed or whether the leader can be replaced beyond it. The first image starts too close, so you decide carefully. The cut must preserve the beginning while removing weakness. This is delicate work, and your breathing slows with it. You make the repair and then run the section through the viewer again. The motion steadies. The picture begins cleanly enough. The leader gives the projectionist room to thread without pulling at the first frame. You write the repair note and set the reel aside. A small task, completed. The day offers many such tasks, and the mind finds rest not in their size, but in their completion. Around noon, the room's light changes, and so does the feeling of the work. Sun, if there is sun, reaches higher windows or glances off nearby buildings. The bench lamp is still needed, but it no longer feels like the only source of warmth. Lunch pails open somewhere. Paper wrappers crackle. A chair is pulled back. You may stop after finishing a reel. because stopping in the middle of a fragile inspection invites mistakes when you return. Your lunch is plain and welcome. You wash or wipe your hands first, careful to remove dust and cement traces. The bread tastes of its wrapping, the coffee has gone slightly bitter, and the apple or biscuit or small piece of cake tastes better than it might anywhere else. Work sharpens simple food. You eat slowly, listening to the room continue around you, and the bench waits without impatience. During the pause, your eyes rest on the shelves. Some cans are marked with studio names, some with exchange numbers, some labels are fresh, while others carry ghost marks from earlier routes. The shelves are not random, though a stranger might think so. You see categories, destinations, priorities, and histories. A good stockroom is a kind of memory made visible, and the film exchange keeps its memory in metal circles and paper slips. When you return to the bench, the first touch of film after lunch feels different. Your hands are cleaner, less dry for a moment, and the strip seems especially smooth. You settle back into the posture. The chair, the lamp, the block, the viewer, and the rewinds receive you again. There is a comfort in work that can be resumed exactly where it was left, as long as the bench has been kept in order. The afternoon often brings reels that must be turned around quickly. A booking may have changed, a theatre may need a replacement, a print may have come back late and must leave again soon. The room may speak more briskly around you, but your own pace remains careful. Speed at the bench is not rushing. It is economy of motion, the result of knowing where each tool is and what each reel requires. You choose the most urgent reel and begin. The label says, "It goes out today," and the note says, "Check all splices." That means you will not linger over every scratch, but every join gets attention. You wind from head to tail, stopping at the first splice. It lies flat. The second is yellowed. The third has lifted at one corner. You replace the third because a lifting splice is a promise of trouble if ignored. The repair is quick because your hands are practiced, not because it is careless. Scissors, scraper, brush, clamp, wait. While it dries, you glance at the root slip, then back to the film. The timing of the day may press gently, but the cement still needs its moment. Material facts do not bend for schedules. A wise worker respects that, because a few seconds saved at the bench can become several minutes lost in a booth. The splice holds, and you continue. Another join near the middle is uneven but strong. You leave it. The next has old residue, so you clean and replace it. The reel gradually becomes more trustworthy, not perfect, but better prepared for travel. You feel the outgoing hour approaching in the room around you, yet the bench remains steady, one repair at a time, one section of film crossing the light. When the reel is finished, you wind it neatly and carry it to the dispatch table yourself. The clerk looks up, reads your note, and places it with the correct route. There is no grand exchange of words. A nod, perhaps, a pencil mark. The can moves from your responsibility to the next person's. That handoff has a satisfying smallness. Work passes cleanly when the information is clear and the material is ready. The afternoon light begins to flatten after that, and the exchange enters a quieter stretch. The urgent reels have left. The remaining work can breathe. You return to an older print set aside for deeper inspection. A reel not needed immediately, but too worn to ignore. These are the reels that teach patience most thoroughly. They do not reward haste, and they often hold several kinds of wear at once. You open the can and find the reel loosely wound, with one side slightly slumped. You support it carefully, preventing the layers from sliding. A loose wind can become a tangle if handled roughly. You set it on the rewind, attach the leader, and let the take-up reel begin to gather it under gentle tension. The first turns are slow, almost coaxing. The film settles into a cleaner shape as it moves. The viewer shows scratches, but the motion is steady. The edge feels dry. At the first splice you find a wide overlap that may have been made long ago with a different standard or a hurried hand. It holds, but it makes a bump. You decide to replace it, and the old join resists before giving way. Under the scraper, the emulsion lifts unevenly, and you take extra care not to score the base. This kind of repair asks you to slow below your usual slowness. The material is older, the previous work rougher, and the consequences of impatience greater. You hold the film gently in place, clean only what needs cleaning, and let the new join form without forcing it flat. When the clamp comes down, you feel the small relief of having done the hard part. Now the cement must do its quiet work. Waiting beside an old reel has a different feeling from waiting beside a fresh one. You are aware of its limits. You do not test too hard. You do not bend it sharply. You support it more than you command it. The repair holds, and you wind onward, letting the take-up reel gather the strip in even layers. The sound becomes smoother as the wind improves, and the reel begins to feel less disorderly in your hands. A few feet later, you find another problem. This time, a torn edge that does not reach the picture. You trim a tiny loose tag so it cannot catch. Then note the section. Not every edge flaw requires a splice. Sometimes removing the small projecting piece is enough. Your judgment keeps the reel from being shortened unnecessarily. Again, the work is a balance between intervention and restraint, between helping and leaving well enough alone. The afternoon room has grown warmer now. The bench lamp, bodies, and daylight have taken the chill out of the metal tools. The cement smell is more noticeable after several repairs, so perhaps a window is opened slightly, if the weather allows. A thread of outdoor air enters, carrying street dust, exhaust, and the distant scent of food from somewhere nearby. It moves across the bench and then thins into the larger room. You continue through the old print, repair by repair, note by note. There is no single dramatic fault, only accumulation. A weak head leader, a heavy splice, a stretched patch near the middle, a tail that needs replacing. This is how many working objects age, not in one grand failure, but in small compromises gathered over time. Your care meets them in the same manner, not with drama, but with a sequence of quiet corrections. By the time the old reel is finished, it looks better in its winding than it did when you opened the can. The edges sit more evenly. The leader is clean. The worst splices have been replaced. You write a longer note than usual, because a worn reel deserves clear information. Usable with care. Several splices replaced. Watch slight warp near middle. The words are simple, but they carry the truth of the material. You place it on a shelf separate from the quick outgoing stack. Some reels need decisions beyond the bench, perhaps whether to keep them in circulation, replace them, or return them for further handling. Your job is to report what your hands and eyes have found. You do not need to decide the entire future of the print. You only need to make the condition visible to those who will decide the next step. As afternoon moves toward evening, we follow the work back into routine, where repetition becomes soft again after the more demanding old print. A newer reel waits, cleaner and easier. You open it, mount it, and let it travel through inspection with little interruption. The film has a pleasant flexibility, and the perforations pass smoothly. Your eyes still check everything, but the reel does not ask for much. Sometimes work gives you a gentler stretch after a harder one. You use that gentleness to reset your attention. The mind can become tight after delicate repairs, and a clean inspection loosens it. You breathe more easily. The handle turns. The strip glides. You note the reel as good, replace only a slightly worn leader, and send it onward. A simple task done cleanly can restore the whole rhythm of the bench. The room feels less crowded afterward, even if nothing visible has changed. The next reel is a newsreel, shorter and more handled at the edges. Newsreels often move quickly through programs, carried by current events, and then replaced by newer ones. At the bench, their urgency has faded. You see only images in miniature, men at podiums, crowds, ships, snow, games, ceremonies, machinery, and streets. The world has been pressed into a strip, but your work stays local. Edge, splice, leader, note. A newsreel may have many joins from editing, and you distinguish those original joins from damage when you can. You are not re-editing. You are preserving the working strip. One splice looks clean and intentional. Another near the tail is a repair that has begun to lift. You replace the lifting one and leave the intentional one alone. Respect for the film includes respecting the choices already built into it. The images pass quickly, almost too full of the world for the quiet bench. You let them go. Your attention rests on what the projector will need from them. A clean path, a sound edge as clear as possible, leaders that do their job. The news may be loud in the theater, but in your hands it is silent and narrow, no more urgent than the care required to keep it moving. When the newsreel is done, you set it with its program group. It will likely run before the feature, perhaps after a short or cartoon. Its can is smaller, easier to lift, but still important to the evening's order. A program is a sequence, and sequence matters. You keep the pieces together so the theater can present the evening smoothly. Again, your work supports continuity, that quiet virtue almost no one notices unless it breaks. The later afternoon may bring a request from the office. Check a certain title before closing, because it has been complained about twice. You find the cans and bring them to the bench. A repeated complaint deserves attention. It may mean a real defect, or it may mean a misunderstanding passed along from one booth to another. Your task is to look carefully enough that the next decision rests on evidence rather than rumor. The first reel seems sound. You inspect slowly, perhaps more slowly than usual, because expectation can make the eyes invent trouble. There are minor scratches, ordinary splices, no serious edge damage. You mark it acceptable. The second reel tells a different story. Near the middle, several perforations are damaged in a row, and the film has a slight buckle beside them. This could certainly cause trouble in a projector. You stop with the section under the lamp and study it from both sides. The damaged length is longer than you would like, but shorter than it might have been. You decide where to cut, aware that this repair will remove a noticeable little piece if handled poorly. The frame line helps you. The soundtrack edge influences you. Your fingers keep the strip flat, while the scissors make their careful choices. The bad section comes away, and you set it apart. Before joining the ends, you examine whether the damage extends beyond the cut. It does not. That is a relief, but a quiet one. You scrape, brush, clamp, and wait. While waiting, you write a note explaining the repair. Damaged perforations removed near middle. Test splice. Your pencil makes the words plain, and the note will travel with the reel if needed. When the repair has dried, you run the section through the viewer by hand. It passes smoothly. You reverse and pass it again, feeling for a catch. Nothing catches. The image may lose a breath of time, but the reel will likely run better than before. This is one of those decisions where the film splicer must accept a small visible loss to prevent a larger public failure. The work is full of such modest trade-offs. The rest of the reel shows lesser wear, and you mark it accordingly. The complaint has found its likely cause. You carry the information to the office, or place it where it will be read. No need for excitement. The print had a fault. You found it. You repaired what could be repaired. The reel now has a clearer condition. This is the satisfaction of practical work, soft as a folded cloth and just as useful. As evening nears, the room changes again. Day workers may gather coats. Roots may be finished. The telephone quiets. The light through the windows dims, and the bench lamp becomes important once more. You feel the cycle turning back toward the atmosphere where we began. The warm island of work in a darker room. A film exchange lives in these shifts of light. Morning grey, afternoon flatness, evening amber, and night's close hush. You clean the bench after the complaint reel because difficult repairs leave more residue. Emulsion dust has gathered near the splicer. A tiny strip of removed perforations lies curled beside the block. You collect it, wipe the surface, and return the scraper to its place. Resetting the bench helps reset the mind. It tells your hands that the next reel is not the last reel's trouble. It will be met freshly. The next task may be simple leader preparation. Several reels need new heads before dispatch, and the work becomes measured and almost domestic. Cut leader. Join leader. Mark leader. Wind leader neatly onto the reel. The blank stock feels plain and obedient compared with old picture film. It has no faces, no soundtrack, no scratches from theaters, only the purpose of beginning. You appreciate its simplicity. You measure enough length by habit, drawing it across the bench with an easy motion. The scissors cut cleanly. The splice joins leader to picture just beyond the proper point. You mark the leader if needed, keeping the writing clear and not too heavy. A projectionist will handle this in low light, perhaps in a hurry, and your clean leader gives them a kinder start. Small courtesies move through trades this way. Leader work also lets you think about beginnings and endings without becoming abstract. A reel needs a head and a tail, because people need something to hold before the picture starts and after it finishes. The fragile images should not be the first thing grasped by tired fingers. The leader takes the wear, accepts the marks, and protects what follows. It is humble material, and humility often has a protective shape. You replace 3 leaders in succession, each one similar but not identical. One reel needs a slightly longer head because the old beginning has been shortened many times. Another needs only a clean tail. The third has writing that is no longer legible, so you renew it. The repetition is soothing, like folding linens or stacking envelopes, except that each motion supports the travel of light through a machine. A co-worker may pause and watch for a moment, not because the work is unusual, but because the motion has a quiet satisfaction. The strip lies in the block. Your fingers align it. The clamp lowers. You wait. Then the reel receives its beginning or ending and is made easier for the next person. The watcher moves on. The rhythm remains. Some kinds of work are easiest to understand by standing near them in silence. The evening stack now includes several cleanly led reels, and their labels look orderly under the lamp. You touch each one only as much as needed. Overhandling is another kind of carelessness, even when the hands are gentle. A reel ready for dispatch should be allowed to remain ready. So you set it down, turn the label outward, and move to the next thing without fuss. As the room grows quieter, the temperature seems to drop again at the edges. You may pull your sleeves down between repairs, then roll them back when handling film. The metal cans regain a little chill. The bench lamp warms your fingers from above. Your body moves between cool storage and warm work, between shelf and light, between the heavier motions of carrying and the fine motions of splicing. The fine motions are the ones that linger in memory, thumb and forefinger guiding the edge, wrist turning the rewind handle, fingertip testing the splice, palm steadying the reel, eyes moving to the soundtrack line, breath paused while the scissors close. None of these actions is large, but each one has been repeated enough to become a kind of language. Your body speaks it fluently after years at the bench. We can stay with one repair in full, slowly, because the whole job is contained in it. The reel turns, and your finger feels a bump. You stop. You bring the film back until the old splice lies under the lamp. The join is cloudy, with one corner lifting. You place the film in the block and study the frame line. The room around you fades to a softer distance, not gone, just less central. You cut just beyond the bad join. The scissors feel firm, and the strip parts cleanly. You trim the other side to match, choosing a place where picture and sound will lose as little as possible. The removed piece curls on itself. You set it aside. With the scraper, you clear the emulsion from the overlap area, making tiny gray dust that gathers like ash on the block. You blow nothing away, because breath can bring moisture. You wipe carefully instead. The cement bottle opens. A brief sharp scent rises. The brush touches the clear base with just enough liquid, and the surface shines for a moment. You align the two ends, perforations over pins, frame lines true. The clamp lowers. Now comes the pause. The pause is not empty. It is where chemistry quietly does what fingers cannot, where the separate ends begin to belong to each other again. You might count breaths, or you might simply wait by feel. Then you lift the clamp and test the splice. It holds. You run it through your fingers, feeling for thickness or lift. It is smooth enough. You wind the section forward and back, watching it pass. It does not catch. The repair is complete, and the reel continues. This single small event has repeated many times, yet it remains worthy of full attention each time. That is the center of the film splicer's patience. Repetition does not excuse absence. The 100th splice deserves the same quiet care as the first, because it will pass through the projector on its own, not as part of your memory of all the others. Each repair must stand alone in the dark. Each one must hold when the lamp is hot and the reel is moving. Your hands understand this responsibility without making it heavy. The evening may now bring back the warm workshop feeling of night, with fewer voices and more space between sounds. A drawer closes somewhere. A paper stack is tapped straight. A cartwheel squeaks once and stops. Your bench lamp hums faintly, and the rewinds cast thin shadows across the wood. The room seems to settle around you, as if accepting that the careful work will continue a while longer. A new can is placed near your bench by someone passing through. They say it can wait until morning, unless you have time. You glance at the label. A small house, a short route, a note about a weak leader. You have enough time for that. The can opens easily. The leader is indeed weak, creased and soft from use. You replace it before the weakness becomes someone else's problem. Preventive care is one of the gentlest kinds. The reel itself does not need much. You inspect the first stretch, check the obvious splices, and wind to the tail. Everything holds. You mark leader replaced and set it aside. A short task, but useful. The worker who brought it will find it ready sooner than expected, and perhaps the morning will be a little lighter. Such small acts accumulate in a shop. They make the difference between constant irritation and a room that functions. There is no need to hurry into the next can, so you take a breath and look toward the windows. The glass now holds reflections more than views. You see the bench lamp doubled faintly, your own outline softened, shelves behind you layered with the street beyond. The reflection makes the room seem deeper. Inside and outside meet in the dark glass, and for a moment the film exchange feels like a lantern set within the city. A film strip is also a kind of window, though a very small one. It holds scenes until light passes through. In your hands, those scenes are dormant, waiting, reduced to frames and edges. You are trusted with them while they sleep. That is a gentle way to think of it, and it suits the late hour. The reels rest in cans, wake in projectors, return tired, and are tended under your lamp before sleeping again. The cycle has a breathing quality. Out to the theater, back to the exchange. Opened, inspected, repaired, closed. Out again. Each journey leaves marks, and each return offers a chance to notice them. You are part of the breath between showings, the pause where the material is restored enough to continue. We stay in that pause because it is calm, practical, and full of small sensory truths. Another reel waits, and this one is a cartoon short. The images in the viewer are lively, drawn shapes moving from frame to frame, but at the bench they become as quiet as any feature. Cartoons often ran for children and families, and they could be handled often, perhaps with laughter rising below the booth. You inspect them the same way. Perforations, splices, leader, sound edge, wind. Joy on the screen still depends on order in the strip. The cartoon's colors, if the print is color, appear muted and strange in the small viewer, or perhaps you inspect a black and white print where motion matters more than hue. Either way, the material reality remains. One splice near the head is heavy, and you replace it. The tiny drawn figure on either side of the cut seems to leap across your repair without knowing it. That is the aim. The action should continue as though your hands were never there. You smile a little at a repeated drawing visible in adjacent frames, not from amusement exactly, but from the intimacy of seeing motion taken apart. The audience sees a leap, a turn, a tumble, a joke. You see the individual stills that make it happen. This does not spoil the magic. It makes another kind of magic, quieter and more mechanical, where life appears because many small still things are carried at the right speed through light. The cartoon passes inspection after the repair, and you return it to its small can. The lid closes with a higher sound than the larger cans. You place it with the program group, making sure it is not separated from its feature. A misplaced short can cause confusion later, so your hand lingers just long enough to check the card. The order is right. The stack waits. The bench has now gathered the feeling of a full day. Scratches in the dust show where cans have been dragged close and lifted away. The cloth has darkened slightly from wiping. Your pencil has been sharpened once or twice. The cement level is lower than it was in the morning. These traces are not mess, not if managed well. They are the visible passage of labor through a set of tools. You clean as you go, but a living bench is never perfectly bare during work. It holds what the current task requires. A reel on the left, take up on the right, scissors near hand, splicer centered, notes above the lamp's lower edge, cloth folded beside the block. The arrangement is specific to your habits, and another worker might set things differently. Still, each good arrangement shares the same purpose. Fewer wasted motions, fewer mistakes. The craft is partly about reducing chances for error. Put tools where they belong. Cap the cement. Keep scraps separate. Mark cans immediately. Finish a note before starting another reel. These habits may sound strict, but they create ease. They mean your tired mind can lean on the room's order. They let the hands continue gently when the hour grows late and attention needs help from routine. A film exchange in the 1940s could be a place of deadlines, but the splicer's best defense against haste was method. Method is time stored in advance. Because the scissors are always there, you do not search. Because labels face outward, you do not guess. Because notes are written at once, you do not rely on memory later. The calm of the bench is built before the pressure arrives, one orderly habit at a time. You see this when an urgent call comes in, perhaps for a replacement reel needed by evening. The room stirs, but your bench does not scatter. The correct can is found. The reel is checked where needed. A leader is replaced quickly because the leader stock is ready. A note is written clearly because the pencil is there. What looks like calm under pressure is often just preparation made visible at the right moment. The urgent reel leaves, and the room settles again. You feel the brief lift of attention pass out through your shoulders. The work returns to its slower pace. There is no need to keep the body braced after the moment has gone. You flex your fingers, take a sip of water or cold coffee, and draw the next ordinary reel closer. Ordinary is welcome after urgency. Ordinary is where most care lives. This reel comes from a theater whose returns are usually tidy. You recognize the label style, the neat handwriting, perhaps even the way the leader is secured. Such patterns become familiar over time. You may never meet the person in that booth, but their habits reach you. Tonight, or this evening, their reel arrives in good condition. You inspect it with appreciation, not by saying so aloud, but by letting your hands move through an easier task. The splices are clean, the leaders are adequate, the wind is even. You note only light scratches and return it to circulation. The whole inspection takes less time than expected, but you do not feel cheated of work. A well-kept reel is a conversation answered with respect. Someone handled it carefully before you, and you confirm that care by not interfering unnecessarily. The reel goes onward, carrying the trace of several competent hands. Another can from a less careful route tells a different story. The leader is dirty, the wind uneven, the tail loose. You take a breath before beginning, because irritation is not useful. The reel does not become better because you resent it. It becomes better because you tend it. So you start with the leader, then the wind, then the first damaged splice, taking each fault as it appears, without letting the whole disorder crowd your mind at once. This is an important trick of quiet work, though you would not call it important while doing it. You break disorder into touchable pieces. A loose tail can be secured. A dirty leader can be replaced. A bad splice can be remade. A note can be written. The whole may have arrived as a small nuisance, but it leaves as a set of solved particulars. That is one of the satisfactions of skilled maintenance. The reel takes time. It has several weak places and a dusty section near the middle. You clean the dust, replace 2 splices, and add a stronger tail. Your hands move steadily. The room might fade around you for a while, because the task is absorbing in a quiet way. When you finally wind the reel smooth and set it aside, the can feels different, not physically lighter perhaps, but less troublesome in the mind. You mark the condition honestly. Several repairs made. Handle with care. The note is not scolding, it is guidance. A projectionist reading it may thread more gently, watch a changeover more closely, or return the reel with more detail next time. The chain improves when information travels with the object. Your pencil helps the film speak beyond the bench, and that too is part of the splicer's role. The evening outside may now be fully dark. The exchange windows show only reflections and scattered streetlight. You can no longer tell much about the weather unless a door opens or footsteps bring it in. The room has become its own climate again. Warm lamp, cool cans, dry paper, faint solvent, low voices, and the steady whisper of film. We are back in the atmosphere where the job feels most intimate, the quiet center of a working night. A few reels remain, and none are urgent. This is when a careful worker may choose the one that benefits most from uninterrupted attention. You select a feature reel with a long complaint note, not because you crave difficulty, but because the room has grown calm enough to handle it well. The note mentions scratches, a rough splice, and possible missing frames near the head. You read it twice and then open the can. The reel is not as bad as the note makes it sound, which often happens when frustration writes quickly. There are scratches, yes, but mostly light ones. The head has been shortened and the leader needs replacing. The rough splice appears within the first few yards. You remove it, repair it cleanly, and then inspect for missing frames. Some loss has already happened in an earlier repair, but there is no fresh break beyond it. You write this clearly because clarity can calm a complaint. Head previously shortened, rough splice replaced, no new break found. The words are simple, but they prevent the same question from circling uselessly. Then you finish the reel, finding only ordinary wear. The complaint was not false, but it was larger than the fault. At the bench, you reduce it to what can be known and done. There is relief in moving from worry to fact. Worry fills a whole can before it is opened. Fact lies in one section of film under the lamp. You can work with fact. You can cut it, clean it, measure it, note it, or decide it must be left alone. The film splicer's world is restful in part because it returns vague trouble to physical detail. The hands help the mind become honest. After that reel, you might stand and walk a few steps, just to let your eyes change distance. Close work can make the world feel flat if you never look up. You look down the row of shelves, across the dispatch table, toward the doorway, and back to the bench. The room's depth returns. Your body thanks you in small ways, loosening behind the eyes, easing at the neck, settling again when you sit. The next reel is easy, and we can let it pass almost like a soft refrain. Open the can, lift the reel, thread the leader, turn the handle, watch the edge, feel the strip, listen for catches, stop for one old splice, decide it holds, continue, check the tail, wind smooth, write the note, close the can, set it on the shelf. Each motion follows naturally from the last, and none asks to be hurried. In such a rhythm, the world outside the job grows distant, but not absent. You may think of home, of weather, of errands, of a bill to pay, of a letter waiting to be answered. The thoughts drift through and away. The reel brings you back each time, not harshly, but by kneading your fingers. Work can be a gentle anchor when it is neither frantic nor empty, when it asks enough of you without asking everything. The film itself glints as it moves, glossy on one side, duller where emulsion holds the image. Under the lamp, it can look almost liquid, though it is solid and narrow. Your fingers do not slide along it carelessly. They guide, lift, pause, and release. The material is strong enough to travel through machines, yet vulnerable enough to tear at a damaged perforation. That combination keeps your touch attentive. A metal reel has its own presence too. The spokes catch light. The hub fits onto the spindle with a small satisfaction when aligned correctly. A bent reel can make trouble, so you notice whether it turns true. If it wobbles, the film may wind unevenly or rub. You report or set aside what needs attention. The film and reel work together, and your care extends to both. A good strip on a bag reel still travels poorly. You find one such reel late in the evening, slightly bent at the rim. The film itself looks acceptable, but the wind is uneven because the reel does not sit quite true. You transfer the film to a better reel, slowly, keeping tension even. The old metal turns with a faint wobble until it empties. The new reel receives the film more smoothly, layer by layer, until the wound edge looks cleaner. Sometimes repair means changing the container, not the strip. You mark the bent reel for removal or retention, then close the film in its can. This small action may save later damage. A bent reel left in circulation can make good film suffer needlessly. The splicer notices such supporting troubles because the bench teaches relationship. Film, reel, can, label, root, projector, and hand all influence one another. Nothing travels alone, even when it seems to. The phrase film splicer may sound like it names only the join, but the work is broader than that. You inspect, clean, label, report, sort, replace leaders, judge wear, and sometimes simply listen to the reel's movement. Splicing is the central craft, but tending is the wider job. In 1940s Minneapolis, amid theaters, delivery routes and exchange shelves, that tending helps keep moving pictures moving through ordinary life. The ordinary life matters. People come to the theater for warmth, company, distraction, news, laughter, music, or a place to sit together in the dark. Your bench is far from their seats, but connected by the film. A repaired splice may help a tired factory worker stay inside a story. A fresh leader may help a projectionist avoid a stressful start. A clear note may keep a manager from making a needless call. Small labor spreads outward quietly. This outward spread is not something you need to think about all day. Too much thinking can make a simple task heavy. But in the calm of our telling, we can recognize it gently. The work is modest, yet it reaches farther than the room. That is true of many quiet jobs. A person doing careful work in one place makes another place smoother without ever standing there. The last reel of this stretch is a feature tail, returned separately for inspection. It has been marked with a question about the ending. You open it and find the tail leader nearly gone, perhaps torn away over many showings. The ending itself is close to the edge of handling, and that makes you careful. You add sufficient tail leader, joining it neatly after the final frame, giving the reel a safer finish. Endings need protection too. The repair is simple, but it carries a pleasing symmetry. A story may end on the screen, but the physical reel still needs length beyond the last image, a quiet tail to be held, wound and protected. Without it, the final frames take too much wear. With it, the ending can remain itself a little longer. You press the splice, wait, test, and wind. The reel receives its new tail like a tucked blanket. You mark the can, set it aside, and look again at the bench. The tools are still there, ready for more, but the immediate row of waiting cans has shortened. The room has entered that late balance between what has been done and what will remain for another shift. No workroom ever empties completely. It only reaches a point where the next hand can continue without confusion. That is the point you work toward. You gather the notes from the last several reels and place them with their cans. Each note is a small extension of your hand. It tells where you stopped, what you found, what you changed, and what someone else should know. In a quiet trade, documentation is not separate from care. It is care made portable. It travels after the reel leaves your bench, speaking in plain pencil when you cannot. The bench cleanup begins again. Slower now. You wipe the splicer. You cap the cement. You align the scissors with the edge of the table. You brush away a faint crescent of emulsion dust. The repeated cleanup might seem unnecessary to describe again, yet repetition is the heart of the job. The same care returns because the same kinds of disorder return. Calm is maintained, not achieved once and left alone. Your hands know the closing motions as well as the working ones. They move without hurry, but they do not wander. Scraps are gathered. Leader stock is covered. The viewer is checked. Reels are moved to their shelves. Papers are straightened. The chair is set back. Each motion reduces the room's demand by a little. A workplace at the end of a shift should not be stripped of life. only settled enough for the next beginning. A final pass along the shelves catches one sitting slightly out of line. You straighten it. Another label has curled at the edge, and you press it flat. These small adjustments are not perfectionism for its own sake. They are part of making the room readable. A readable room saves effort for everyone who enters it. The eye can find what it needs. The hand can reach without doubt. The film splicer's day, whether it began in darkness or ends in it, has been full of such readability. Reading labels, reading edges, reading wear, reading notes, reading the feel of stock against skin, reading the room's order. It is not reading in the library sense, though archives and ledgers have their place. It is reading by contact, a practical literacy built from touch, smell, sound, and repeated consequence. We can let the thought rest there, while the room continues to quiet. A drawer closes. A clerk's voice fades toward the front. The dispatch shelf holds tomorrow's travel. The incoming shelf holds tomorrow's questions. The bench holds its tools in a neat cluster under the lamp. Your hands are tired, but not restless. They have done many small things, and the small things have added up to a room that can keep functioning. The city outside remains layered with work and sleep. Somewhere a theater is beginning its evening show. Somewhere another projectionist is threading a reel. Somewhere a truck carries cans over dark pavement. Somewhere an audience settles into seats, not knowing the bench, the scraper, the cement, the pencil, or the worn wood under your palms. We know them tonight, and we stay with them quietly, because knowing small work can make the night feel held. The next shift may bring different reels, different complaints, different weather, and different voices in the room, yet the center will be familiar. The splicer's block will wait. The rewinds will turn. Film will cross the lamp from one reel to another. Your hands, or hands like yours, will find damage, make repairs, write notes, and send the reels onward. The rhythm continues, not as a conclusion, but as a working life unfolding in repeated, careful turns. For now, there is still the sensation of film moving in memory, the soft pull across your fingers and the tiny regularity of perforations. There is still the smell of paper labels and closed cans. There is still the warm circle of the lamp, even if the room beyond it has grown dim. The Minneapolis Film Exchange remains around us in this gentle way, not asking for attention loudly, only offering the steady comfort of work that knows its place. The lamp over the bench is the last warm thing in the room, and its light rests softly on the splicer, the scissors, and the clean wooden space where the final reel has passed. Your hands have slowed now. They no longer reach for the next can, because the work has found its stopping place. The film cans wait on the shelf with their labels turned outward, quiet and ready, each one holding its small hidden repairs inside the dark coil. You wipe the bench one last time, not because it's dirty, but because the motion belongs to the end of the shift. A few pale flecks of emulsion dust gather on the cloth. The cement bottle is capped, the brush is still, and the rewind handles no longer turn under your palms. Outside, Minneapolis has gone soft around the edges, with street lamps on wet pavement, distant tires, and the low hush of buildings holding their nighttime warmth. For a moment, you stand beside the bench and let your eyes rest on the ordinary tools. They have no shine left to prove anything. They only look used, trusted, and ready to sleep. The reels will travel again, through booths and projectors and darkened rooms, but that belongs to another set of hands. Yours can let go now. The lamp is switched off, and the bench settles into shadow. The cans keep their quiet places on the shelf. The room cools around them, and the long ribbon of the day lies wound away, safe in the dark.